I got company, I got company, I got company, I got company. Here we go. Already an hour on the march, and here I used to do volunteering in the past, and now they moved. It was a food bank and NDG, and you know how I rock and roll. Always for the firefighters, butchers, bakers, nurses, truckers, plumbers, electricians, the welders, all those involved in the production, distribution of food. And I just wanted to show a little bit of this talented beautification of the city. I think this is really talented, a really great talent there, and all of it, all this one is just pretty much nice art. So I'm gonna commence the march to the mountain with some nice beautiful art here, if you can see, and it's got some of that good talent, I gotta say, and it's quite something. As an artist, athlete, philosopher, geopolitical theoretical analyst, theorist, philosopher, and thinker, you know, who lives with that HFA, high functioning autism, Asperger's, and who today is grateful although financially stressed. And I gotta be grateful, you know, I'm going to the mountain, it's sunset, and just gonna close this. And I got a lot of things to be grateful for, you know. And 19th of September, paid my rent, paid my electricity bill. Still gotta pay that phone a bit, and I'm budgeting, and I'm still in the budget. I got $3.60 left. I bought some to charge that backpack. That red backpack. In that red backpack now there's some of that good sweets. I bought some sweets, you know, I spent exactly $5.88 to get the sweets. I was within budget. I stayed within budget, so I had like $11 and like 45 cents. So I still got some leftovers. I counted, so I didn't spend. I stayed within budget. And yesterday was a no spend. Remember in the video, if you check it, you see that I'm tempted, of course, to spend some money, and finally we didn't spend because we said we spent some Wednesday, and we are on a tight budget. I think I got, well, it's already 19th of September, so for the next 11 days I think I got $25 left, and it's mostly for food and sweets and wafers. And I got me 4 chocolate bars, 63 cents each, so that was about $2.50 for that. Then I got some wafers at $1.50, and I got something new for $1.50, which is good in weight. Is that kind of vanilla and chocolate cookie mixed together. It's 300 grams, so it's kind of more, you know, more weight. It has more weight, you know, and that is just something which I gotta be doing myself, you know. And I guess I'm gonna get it on the go, yeah. I guess I'm gonna get it on that rock and roll to be doing with it, and to get it doing on that go, you know, to be symbolizing all the environmental factors and aspects of today's world. And today's the 19th of September, so heading to the mountain. And today I did a lot of cleaning and going to my second home, the mountain, and it's pledge you allegiance to our family, always for the firefighters and the butchers, the bakers, truckers on the road now, always for the 63, the train conductors, warehouse workers, and dock workers, and construction workers, LOV, public bus drivers, and always for the workers of the North American Collectif, which it has beautiful garden here. Most of the workers now, majority, are very stressed financially, even with the cost of living having gone. And you know how my brain works. Just now I was at the corner, I want to ask you, I was calculating, you know, the different prices. Although gas went up by 6 cents, it's 157, but yesterday and the day before was 166. But I was calculating how much it costs, you know, because prices have increased so much in the gas consumption, and the stagnation of the salary makes it that it accounts for this, of course, sucking of or diminishing the power of the citizen consumer, what's called purchasing power of the citizen consumer, you know. So I was doing that meditation earlier, and I guess sometimes we gotta just meditate and know a little bit of mathematics, you know. And being that I'm different myself, you know, I'm part of the neurodivergent population. I have this condition called Asperger's. I discuss it often because it's important, because myself, I'm part of the half of Aspies who are not officially diagnosed, but I've been, of course, diagnosed by several individuals. It started about 9 years ago. By several individuals who have experienced citizens in the healthcare system, with people working with people with autism, autistics, and with Asperger's, and I didn't want to accept it. And for like more than 5 years, I was no, because whether you accept that categorization, it means, of course, that you're different, and I am different, and this difference, of course, manifests in how we process the world, how we see the world, how we interact, how we process information. And sometimes it could be weird things, such as trying to now, when I'm marching, calculating the areas, the surface, of different squares of the routes, and mathematics with that. And that's what it is with that goal, and that's what it is. That's what it is with that. And that is all we gotta get doing with that. I sing of that rock and roll a little bit, always for that rock and roll, always for the left and the right and the middle. And we gotta get on those steps. We gotta turn our heads left, right, to make that prudent, because sometimes we gotta stay in the gray. It's not all black and white, see? So anyways, I'm just gonna commence with gratitude. We're gonna discuss, of course, Asperger's, and also known as HFA. But yeah, for many years I did not want to accept it. I refused it constantly for years and years and years and years, for about more than 5 years, until finally about 3.5 years ago I said, yes, I'm different. I have this difference, and makes sense, accounts for me losing friends and not being able to maintain long-term friends, and jobs, is the problems we face. And I guess having dropped out of college, and having, of course, also the long-term employment problem, which is very common for people with Asperger's due to this difference, how we process information, how we communicate sometimes socially. I'm going to discuss it, but those are mainly the 4 problems which Aspies encounter, people with high-functioning autism. And of course, it's losing jobs, or it's high unemployment is 80% from my community, and we're a tiny community. I'm part of the half of unofficially diagnosed, who, of course, only half are diagnosed officially, and that accounts for about 0.44% of the population. So meaning that in reality is about 0.88%, but it's still less than 1%. Even if all Aspies would be diagnosed, at least for the North American collective, for the North American population, even then it will be less than 1%. So it's not that common. It's not, some people don't even know about it. So it's something which I have to live with, of course, in the circumstance. I kind of like those white flowers there, how they are, kind of in the corner. You do have to check them out. So that is just something which you have to live with, and it's a constant thing which I have to live with myself. And that is just the interaction where we have to interact to be aware of this difference, and we have to not get too close to comfort. For people, we have to, of course, take our distance. And sometimes all these things are, of course, more difficult. What a beautiful flowers there in the corner. So all these things are more beautiful in the corner. There are beautiful flowers. So all these things, which of course come very easy for people who are neurotypical. They come very easy for you. The social awareness, social conduct, when to speak, when not to speak, things of that nature. Things of that nature are something which we gotta get on that go. But it takes more processing. So for us, the processing of information, how we process information socially is different, from the majority of the population. And that is just how we are in the understanding of non-written social cues. We can have a difficulty. So that's why we ourselves are more direct, more straightforward, and that is how we are with that, a bit more straightforward and direct in certain circumstances. I'm certainly cultivating politeness as much as I can, but it's something which, it's not necessary to mask. Autistic masking, which can happen. Autistic masking is something which can occur, So anyway, so that's basically the general pursuit, the general overall idea of what we Aspies deal on a day-to-day basis. Fundamentally on a day-to-day basis, when we interact with others, it is all these dynamics, which can come very easy for you, the vast majority of the population of 99%ers who are neurotypicals. It can come very easy. The way you discuss, the way you communicate, certain things, non-written rules, such as, for example, personal space, right? An Aspie like myself or other Aspies might breach the personal space and get very close to the face by 4 inches or a few centimeters to the face, very close. So that closeness would indicate, of course, that for others, you might trigger even an alarm, a feeling of unease, discomfort, insecurity, and things of that nature. That might be a consequence of breaching this personal space. And I remember my friend for years, and he said, take a step back, you're too close to, things of that nature. So I always even now have to take a step back, or even 2 steps back, because I have to work on those characteristics. And again, Asperger's is not an illness, it's not a disease. I just have to work constantly on those characteristics, and sometimes it requires tremendous effort, And this is reciprocal, because again, it's not a disease, Asperger's is not a disease. That's where we have to draw the line. As I go now on my march and saluting the firefighters, the butchers, march for the butchers, the bakers, pledge your allegiance for my family, for the firefighters, the truckers, the electricians, all those involved in the production, distribution of food, and gotta check it out for them, for the construction workers. Always interested for that construction workers to get in on that play and what they're building here in the corner. Always mindful, of course, that all this civilization is a privilege, This is the privilege of civilization. For example, that I discussed in the past, just having this electricity, Having this electricity is, of course, something which we have, of course, common. Thank you, Hydro-Quebec, go, for us to have all this electricity here. And all this electricity is something which we enjoy because of the workers of the past, the Hydro-Quebec, that built all these electric wirings underneath their sewers, see? All these sewer canals there. Sewer canals for us to have sanitation, and the sanitation which we have, for example, just to have potable water to be able to do the dishes. As I did my dishes today, you don't have to go to the river. This is a privilege of civilization. That was my thesis back in 2023. The privilege of civilization. That was my thesis back in 2023. So I have to revise it, to do it again, of course, to rediscuss it, as I am a philosopher, a theorist, a financial theoretical analyst and theorist, and all those are part of my journey as I go all the way to the mountain and back, and of course categorized to be in the mountain, on the mountain, Mount Royal. And that is just something which, of course, we have to meditate of our common collective, of course, at individual levels, and then the common, we all have the privilege of civilization. We all have it across the North American collective and beyond. So we all have it. And of course, we all have it, of course, in the interdomain where we are now, to be interjected, and of course to meditate a little bit on this fundamental aspect of our civilizational complex, of which we have electricity, right? Think about it. Workers in the 20th century had built so many dams, and we linked them with wires and tons and kilometers of wires, and for us just to have electricity. And myself, I gotta be grateful because I'm doing this work. It's like, this is my work in many ways, as a YouTuber, artist, athlete, philosopher, geopolitical theoretical analyst, theorist, thinker, strategist, and mystic. I believe in reincarnations, and I lived many past lives, many incarnations, many past lives, many incarnations. Once, a few times actually, as a man, a woman, a man here on the island of Montreal. Was born, lived as a woman between 1688 and 1735, and I lived in the United States I was born as a woman once, post 1776. And twice as a man, served in the same United States Armed Forces. That's a beautiful garden. We're gonna go back. The United States Armed Forces, I served in 2 different wars. Those 2 different wars were 156 years apart, and I just love this garden here. I always love when I pass by here how amazing they structured it and how beautiful it is. Kind of has a symmetrical beautification of the cities, and outside is certainly beautification of the exterior public spaces is something which I really, really appreciate, and this always was my smile here. Yeah, it's really nice, isn't it? How you go there, you pass by the side, and it's all the way, it's so fluorescent even in the night, and I love that. I love passing by that garden there. There's many other gardens which I enjoy, as you know from my past work, that I am a garden lover and I love flowers, especially yellow flowers, although red, red, scarlet crimson is my favorite color, you know. Scarlet crimson is my favorite color, and that is something which we have, of course, to interject, of course, in all the domains, in the plurality of the communication where we are now, to be it in the interjections where we are to be the domain and the plurality of all the circumstantial appellations where we involve ourselves with the being in the sphere of today's climate and social, political, economic climate. As of course, certainly myself, I'm under lots of economic, financial stress. Myself, I'm financially stressed, and that's basically my only malaise, my only stress now, if I could say, you know. My only stress, really, it is financial. Besides that, I'm joyous, and just lived through a lot. And finally, about 3.5 years ago, I've accepted my Asperger's and that I am an Asp, because, you know, just I suffered all the traits and still the problems that Aspie encounter, especially, you know, when it comes to employment, friends, and depression, suicidalness. I was depressed, I was suicidal. I dropped out of college, of course. And of course, all those matters, of course, are circumstantial to be, of course, in the position where we are now. For us, of course, to be in the domains where we are living today fully and integrated, is we got to build those bridges, you know. So we got to build bridges, whether we build small bridges, medium-sized bridges, extra large bridges, those 4 categories: small, medium, large, extra large. Is just like when you order a coffee, you know. You can order a coffee or fries at a fast food restaurant or at a coffee shop. You might order a small cup of coffee or a small fry, or medium-sized coffee or fry, and large coffee or fry or extra large. You might order one of those. Of course, 4 is just, I guess, the size, but those are the type of bridges which we got to build with each other, and we got to build those bridges. We have to build those bridges, you know. Those bridges have to come fundamentally from my end to your end, and for different ends, of course, for us to coalesce and to build the bridges right together in this world where we live, and where we have to. Personally, I don't have antagonistic feelings. Hydrate a bit here because it's gonna be a journey, so I'm always leave a bit of some time for the pipes to clear. So sometimes there's dust and residue, and you know, after pipes, I always count about 10 to 20 seconds before HYDRAT, because we're going on top of the mountain, and until the mountain there's quite a way to go until we get to that next hydration. Although I got it in the backpack, but that backpack got some pounds on it. You see, I got that backpack right there, so good. That's really what I needed, to be honest. God feels so much better now. It's important because I started filming later. So of course, as I started filming later, that is of course the awareness of me having to go to the mountain now by the way here to go, and just going to the mountain 24/7, and it's rock and roll, fitness, sports, and that's my special interest, you know. And many people have told me in the past, it's been about 9 years ago, a little bit more than 9 years, it's not been kind of diagnosed in a way, because these fellow citizens which have told me they have experience with the healthcare healthcare system, and have experience with people with autism and people with Asperger's, and have told me, you're on the spectrum, you have HFA, it's a form of autism now, it's been merged, with autistic spectrum, and it's called Asperger's, and you're neurodivergent. And I said, no, and then I guess about 3.5 years ago during COVID, which I survived, I accepted I have this neurodivergent condition. It's not a disease. And Asperger's is not evil, it's not bad, it's not negative, it's not malicious, it's not bad, negative, malicious, or detrimental. It's not bad, it's not evil, it's not malicious, it's not negative. It is a neurological condition which can make people like me a bit odd, weird, and strange, and outright bizarre in certain ways. And there's the mountain there. There's the mountain. That's the West Mount. Now we're going to the West Mount. The three-peak mountain is Mount Royal. The whole mountain system is called Mount Royal, but that's West Mount and Mount Royal proper, and then you have Outram on the other side. And the three-peak mountain can be seen afar off for hundreds of kilometers around the body on the go. And that is sometimes where we gotta go there for some aspects where we got, but that is just, it can be seen afar off, hundreds of kilometers and miles even, and it's right between the east and the west. That is Montreal. It's an island, out of Montreal, the second most populated city in Canada, was the first for hundreds of years. Many centuries it was most populated and one of the most important in North American cities. And of course, now it's the second in Canada most popular. It's about 2.5 million people. And of course it's an island. And the other aspect of it is it's wide, like a wide island. It looks like a bird, hawk from above, and it is just something which it looks about from above the top, and you can look at it, satellite images, and you can check it out. So it's a big island, big island. 2.5 million people, 4.5 with the south and the north shore, the metropolitan area, that is of course with the north and the south. And that is just the congruencies of all the factors, where of course Montreal was the most populated city in North America. The most populated city in North America. That is what it is, That is something which you gotta be joyous. When I see the youth joyous with music and dancing in the street, that's always fun for me and quadruples my smile, safely, securely, and lovingly here, That's what's most important. And I guess that scene, those 7, youth, adolescents that pass with the music and bumping their heads, I guess that's that was made my day in many ways, my march for the youth. Gotta include the youth, always including the youth in my march, the young, the youth, the children, the elderly, all butchers, bakers, nurses, farmers, and firefighters, the truckers, the electricians, the plumbers, the bakers, thinking about bakers, construction workers, hydroelectricians, computer scientists, electric workers, those who get it on that grid now, to get it on that now. So that's just something which, you have to get on the dynamic, of course, of all the circumstantial positions where we are now, to circumvent and to have to get a little bit of that XYZ to get it now, and, to just get this aspiness of mine, which I live. And there's no medication for aspie. You cannot medicate. You're supposed to stop there because you got to stop, but still do the turning your head left or right. You got to turn your heads left and right regardless, because sometimes the brakes don't function. So if the brakes don't function, or the citizen presses the accelerator instead of the brake, then of course that is the problem. That is the problem. If the accelerator is pressed instead of the brake, that could be a problem for both the pedestrians and the vehicle. So that's why I urge all to turn your heads left and right, even if there's a stop, even if you cause a pedestrian, cross it, but just double prudence, because in the public, I have myself added responsibilities, duties, and obligations, which if I would have stayed home, I would have not had the same. I'm now in the public, I'm going on to my second home, the mountain. So I have these added responsibilities, added duties, added obligations, and also rights and privileges. The rights and privileges, under the privilege of civilization as an umbrella, to have these pedestrian sidewalks and the traffic routes and the traffic laws, and all this is quite a privilege of civilization. So of course all that to say that we have, as an individual sovereign citizens, we have our due part complementary, concordiate responsibilities, not to be overly intellectual, academic, scholarly about it, but pretty much the finality of that will rest upon the dual nature of being in the public, that we have both responsibilities, duties, and rights, right? And of course, I'm somebody who doesn't like violence. I don't like violence. I do not like violence. And I lived it. I was attacked by surprise, vicious. I survived a vicious surprise attack years and years and years ago. I gave a new deadline by October 31st to retrieve the archives at the Jewish General Hospital. Maybe I'll go Monday or Tuesday, because I got to do a big autumn cleaning. Monday is autumn, so gonna do that autumn cleaning Monday. And of course, I gave me until that time to go, although I missed a lot of deadlines, and gave me until that time of course, to go and retrieve the archives at the Jewish General Hospital. I was attacked. I survived a vicious surprise attack. I was hit in the head and hit my head on the concrete, and had a dislocated right shoulder. Right arm was bloodied up. So I went to the Jewish General Hospital. They cracked back my arm. Cracked back my right arm, right shoulder was fully dislocated, and then I was put on some meds. And just my memory prior to February 2014, prior to February 2014, I just a blackout, It's like raw retrograde amnesia already. I don't know if I was a junkie, if I was doing drugs, if I was consuming alcohol, if I was an alcoholic for a few years. That would also explain memory loss. So, but thank God it's God, because it's always a God bless and Goddess kiss our empire coming out of 63. Always for the 10, the 15, the 63. Coast to coast, ocean to ocean, I got that. Canada tatted up, Got the flag tatted up there. Don't ask me when I got it, how I got it, because unless I find some journals describing it, see, Canada, then I will probably know. But as far as my memory goes, then of course the blackouts which I had, is something which is hard to, of course, remember my life prior to 2014, February 2014 to be precise, but keeping in mind that we're in September, then since we are in September 2025, that means that it's March, April, May, June, July, August, September. So it's more than 11 years and a half. So about 11 years and 7 months ago. That's quite of a long time, eh? February 2014. February 2014. February 2014. February 2014, February 2014, yeah, that's 11 years and 6 months. That was a long time ago. Hey, look at those. Quite interesting, yeah. And this one, it's kind of nice what they have here. In terms of that, and that is just something which we have, of course. Interject now for the memory loss. That I have a very good memory, but just of the past 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years, and then before February 2014. Before February 2014, it is of course a mystery who I was, I guess. But I know because I graduated high school, so I have a high school diploma. I lived on the South Shore, and I dropped out of college. Many Aspies, people with Asperger's, have encountered a very high dropout rate for Asperger's. People with Aspies are on the spectrum, on autistics, is a high dropout rate among the Aspie community. Very high dropout rate. Very high. So whatever the case may be, whatever the situation, I guess it's sometimes which we gotta concord it, and which we gotta concord it for that, and which we gotta be on that go, and that is something which we gotta get doing on that, and on the satisfactory, of course, aspect of the whole dynamic of the situational, informative, life-affirming matters, which we are now in the life-affirming domains. That sometimes memory comes back, and sometimes it doesn't, and it doesn't really matter because that's so long ago. So, and mostly what matters is me moving from where I used to live. I used to live in a moldy place, very moldy place, underground type of small, like a prison cell, like a small prison cell, So that was just something which we got to get doing with that, and to get doing on the go. So I used to live in that small, moldy place, very small. It was an underground basement. It was very small. I didn't even have, of course, I didn't even have a proper kitchen. The kitchen was integrated in the room, basically. So I didn't have a separate kitchen, and I didn't have a bathtub. I'm grateful that I have one now. I lived on the island of Montreal, so I thought I moved in 2016, but suppose I moved in 2015. So I don't know how long I lived there. I remember, because I lived there so my memory of my live there is, of course, the living there, of course, from this 2020, from February 2014 till, of course, July 2015 when I moved. And I remember that moldy underground basement, like a tight prison cell, which was, of course, the tight prison cell of that. And it wasn't really a prison cell. I always say, of course, that I served my time, and in many ways I did say that I served my time with that. That's what I gotta get doing with that. And I guess I served my time in many ways. Maybe I was saved. I say I was saved by the goddess in order to save others, because I kind of saved a few people in the past 11 years. In the past 11 years, In the past 11 years, I guess I saved a lot of people. So I guess I balanced those scales, Maybe that's what I would save myself to save others, and I'm not perfect, far from it. It's just that I do not like violence. I don't like violence, and I'm part of the LGBTQ community, androgynous, pansexual, always artist, androgynous, pansexual, Aspie, with Asperger's, because it's not a symptom, it's not a disease, it's a syndrome. It's a neurological mental divergent condition. It makes us, categorize, of course, where the things which we have now to live with on the domain, to get that transmission of all the importance that it is now. I have some hope for myself and for others, especially for the youth. And look at this beauty. What is this? Interesting blue. Sometimes you see interesting automobiles, and my favorite automobile, if I ever buy it, is 1963 Cadillac. So that is just to finalize where I used to live there, and I was still on the island of Montreal, Côte des Neiges, and I don't know how many years I lived there. A few years at least, because I found some leases and some information with that same address for a few years. So at least a few years, at least like 5 years. At least 5 years. And I know I graduated high school because I have the high school diploma on the South Shore, 2003, and I don't have a birth certificate, so I gotta find it. I hope maybe I'll find it, maybe I won't, but maybe I was born, on the go, and that is just something which we have, of course, to do. So it is, of course, in the confirmation of all the dynamics where we are now, to be doing on that, and that is something which we have, of course, to get the confirmation on. Or I guess maybe I was born, of course, on the ground, the Pentagon. Maybe I was born on the ground, the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. Maybe I was born in Lugoj, Transylvania, Romania. Maybe I was born in Berlin. Maybe I was born here on the island of Montreal or in Haifa. There's just something what we got and something what we have to get it on the go now. And there's just the domain, of course, to get it on the go. And I died here on the island. I want to die here and bury me with Papa Crowley, a third of me up in New Jersey, Hampton. Send every 11 years, send me on, of course, on the mountain. 11 years spent on the mountain, and that gives me some hope, I guess. Somebody kissing there and making out, making out a bit. That's always good. And let's get some salutations from the fellow Sits, from the Sits, east, west, north, south, my fellow citizens here, brothers and sisters, uncles, and all, who come to join us here in the coming of our empire, the Empire of the free, the strong, the brave, the loving, and gotta get that rehabilitation, My brothers and sisters gotta get some rehabilitation. I certainly got my second, third, fourth chances, and it's something which we gotta get doing on that, and we gotta get on that rock and roll with that, and that's what you gotta get doing on the love, man, Here from downtown, we're gonna take a turn towards the mountain. That was my second home, and maybe we can cross. I guess we can cross here, way to cross, and if not, we can always cross on the side there. But yeah, let's cross here by the light, I guess best. And always for the firefighters, butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, the plumbers, the electricians, and all those involved in the production, distribution of food. And gotta salute, gotta give some rock and roll for those in the fast food, changing, doing some of that, flipping of those burgers, cheeseburgers, hamburgers, preparing some fries, and getting on the go there. And it's something which you have to get doing on that double trouble, and it's something which you have to be mindful about in the categories, of course, of the plurality of the civilizational complex which we have now, to get it, and they're holding hands, and that gives me hope, and I see people holding hands a bit, and a bit of that good loving. It's always good for me, gives me hope, and that's what I like to see, people loving and kissing, holding hands, and going out dancing and going out safely and with some hygiene. Also encourage you to please keep the protocols, public hygienic protocols of COVID, because we still got some bacteria, some germs. We still got some bacteria, some germs, and it's super important for me, at least, as I encourage you to keep the protocols of COVID, I died during COVID, I had COVID. That's why I'm saying I'm like on my fourth rebirth. On my fourth rebirth, Fourth rebirth. This I like. And I kind of like it. You can see how there's a simple beauty to it here. See, it's kind of white and green. Here what it is, white and green, and gotta get it on that white and green here for the left, for the right. And that's kind of cute, I gotta get doing on that. So that's where we are now, and you got some work being done there, and that's also where we got, and sometimes where we gotta get on that rock and roll, for the lovers, and holding hands of that, and that's all we got, man. People hugging, kissing. It's always gives me some hope, because it's not all about the money, Money is to buy, sell, and I guess I'm on my fourth rebirth now this year since 2014, and sometimes memory comes back, and what's not affected by memory loss or retrograde amnesia is mathematical skills. linguistic skills. It's just personal memory, you know. But that's a long time ago. Who was I, you know? Like, what was I doing? Was I drinking? Was I an alcoholic? Was I doing drugs? And was I doing on that drugs? And was I, you know, like a junkie? Was I junkie-esque? And hey, I gotta appreciate, look at this donation here. I'm gonna share it with my anonymous friend. We're gonna get some of that bagels, you know. We're gonna get some of those bagels, and that's always good and fun to share. I don't have the cream cheese, but maybe in the future we're gonna have. I guess it all depends. I check the prices. I wonder how much the price for cream cheese is nowadays. Sometimes it goes up and down, eh? Well, mostly up. Down when it goes down, it's because it's on special, but it's possible sometimes that it downs up, you know. So, yeah. Ah, 4 seconds. I wasn't going to. I'm just gonna stretch here a bit. Put the leg here and stretch, you know. I'll wait for the next one. Unless we go, you know what? Sometimes we could just change a bit. How about we go? Yeah, let's go a bit on Sherbrooke and then go up. What do you say? Let's change it a bit. Maybe sometimes just changing a bit of the route. We still go to the mountain, I guess, but nah, changed my mind. Changed my mind. Changed my mind. I was gonna go the other way, but I guess I changed my mind, you know, because it's a important faculty, but sometimes you change your mind with that and gotta get it on that go and make sure, you know, cross the street safely. I was gonna go through the other side all the way, but then I said, because I don't want to prolong it by so many hours today. I just want to get back do the 5 hours, you know, do the required and get back to that drill. So that's how we're gonna head to the mountain and back home, you know. I was gonna go all the way to the corner of University and Sherbrooke and University. I changed names there. The street changed its names right at the Tim Hortons there at the corner. But technically, I have money to get a coffee, but I changed my mind. I was gonna go get a coffee and then go with a coffee and on the other side, go enter the mountain by the other side. You know, basically that's what I wanted to do, but I changed my mind. We're gonna go by this way. And usually, most of the time, we go to the mountains. So yeah, memory loss can be affected by trauma, PTSD, and you know, it was maybe the mold, MOLD, the mold, because it's a very moldy place from what I remember. Because I remember living there for at least, like I said, I probably lived there for more than 5 years, but I do have a good memory of living there for like a year and a few months, right? For at least February 2014 till about 2015 summer. So I remember that mold, and it was very moldy around about, even with the neighbors there. So it was a small place. I didn't even have a bathtub. I'm grateful I have a bathtub now. I didn't even have a proper kitchen, I didn't even have a proper kitchen. It was in the room, so very small, moldy. I guess it was like a prison cell. I guess I served my time, and I was saved by the goddess. I got a GODDSS with that. Let's build the Forgotten Goddess Temple together in the Imperial People's Coliseum and on the Canadian US border to be 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome. And that Caesar Superdome is gonna be the biggest ever Coliseum ever built, you know. The biggest ever Coliseum ever built, and quite beautiful here. I wonder how much it is. 2.5, 3.5, 4.5, 7.5, 8.5. I wonder how much it costs. I'm not looking to move. I can't afford it anyways. I'm grateful for what I have now. It's better than where I was living, and if I would have stayed there, who knows, maybe I would have been dead or dead on the streets, homeless on the streets, in jail, or maybe I would have become a underworld criminal king, been of the underworld, criminal, transnational, international, organized crime syndicate. But I'm for that justice, and have been for many years. And I guess I survived and lived with my scars. And maybe I was an alcoholic. Sometimes alcoholism, for a few years, if I was drinking, can cause memory loss, or doing drugs as well. Doing drugs as well can cause memory loss. What's more important is mostly since I came out of my depression. So I was depressed and suicidal for at least a few years. And now we're going up. See, we're going up the mountain. Now the slope is going steep up. So from about summer 2014 till about summer 2017, I was depressed, I was suicidal, and I crossed Canada coast to coast. 2017. I crossed Canada coast to coast in 2017. So celebrating 8 years. I wonder how much is rent as well here. Just to calculate financial costs. If I would have the money, I would get my anonymous friend a house now, and by that house where we saw the house, which we saw it. I saw the house in a few days ago and last week. We saw the house right by the river. It had that weeping willow. You know. It had that weeping willow. So basically it had a weeping willow, and of course that's where I would get it. That's what I was getting it. To get it. For that concordium. For that concordium. I would get her that house for the weeping willow, and for the house right to the river to my anonymous friend, and that's what I would get it for her. And let's see, we're going up. So that is just what it is, of course. For the domains, and for the love, and for the firefighters, butchers, bakers. Thank you, public workers. So see, that's kind of sunflowers there. It's kind of cute right there in the middle, and embellishing, of course, the public spaces is going to be something which we're gonna need to be doing. Embellishing the public spaces is something which we're gonna need to be doing. Embellishing the public spaces is something which we're gonna need to be doing. As this here, you know, see, the embellishment of the public spaces is something which we're gonna need to be doing continuously in our empire. The 63, come and let it out and let it be, you know, for all the financial involvement which we are now, you know, to categorically, of course, be suffused in all the concordiate, in all the domain, in all, of course, the plurality of what we are now. That's just something which we got. And all the possibilities of all the life-affirming matters, and where we are in this domain, and where we are for the future. No need to vote. It's time for the... And of course, you see, of course, all the lights Thank you, Hydro-Quebec, workers who maintain these lights and who built them. It's the workers. So much work, to building and to be continuously to building on. And that's just something which we have, of course, to be continuously involved with the maintenance of this great civilizational complex of North America, of which we constitute. So back to, we're gonna finalize on memory loss, and does not affect personal skills, mathematics skills, language skills. It does not affect those. It does not affect those skills, right? So it does not affect mathematics. And again, when you hear the ambulance, the firefighters, sirens of the firefighters, the ambulance, the security forces, the police, you do the citizen integrated protocol 180 degrees to the left, 180 degrees to the right, and you slow down. You slow down when you drive. If you're a pedestrian, you do the 180, what I call yesterday I discussed it, which we need to distribute these pamphlets and let all citizens know about the 360 citizen integrated security protocols. And for the citizen integrated security protocols, you turn 180 to the left, 180 to the right, and that is the full circle, what I call the full circle public citizen security protocol, the full circle public security protocol, which involves us turning left and right and right and left, all the domains, to cover all angles. So when you hear the ambulance, sirens of the ambulance, sirens of the police, sirens of the firefighting machine, fire trucks, sirens of the fire trucks, you do the 180 left, 180 right, and then 180 plus 180, that gives you 360, so you cover the full circle roundabout. That is my citizen protocol. I'm not going to go too philosophical academic on it, but we need to, all across the 63 in the empire, we're going to be teaching our fellow citizens and all who come to join us here about doing that. And especially if you're driving, slow down the car, stop pressing your accelerator, slow down, and all to do that for added security, safety in the public, So memory loss is not affected by, so memory loss can happen due to trauma, concussion, alcohol. If you're an alcoholic, after a few years of drinking, if I was drinking, or if I was a junkie, if I was doing hard drugs for a few years, it's possible that's why I have trouble remembering my life prior to February 2014, living in that very moldy underground place. So whoever I was, I died. I'm being reborn during COVID. Adrian Hanna Dragon, keep my name out of your mouth if it's not for a blessing. Laying the foundations for the Imperial Republic of the 63 with trillions of kisses. Created from the forgotten goddess. Trillions of kisses. Created from the forgotten, I do G-O-D-D-S-S it, and that's just something which we have to be, and we have to get on that go, for the goddess, and get those trillions of kisses, G-O-D-D-S-S, goddess, for the forgotten goddess. That is just something which we have, of course, to do, and that's just something which I have to apply today, and have to, of course, be mindful of all the privileges that I have, you have, we have, and the gratitude expressed. It's great for mental health and encouraging all to work out, and I've been on my fitness journey, since 2017, 2017, when I celebrate today 8 years. In August 2017, I went to Vancouver, BC, Vancouver, British Columbia. Yeah, my anonymous friend. 3.5 days from Montreal to Vancouver, and another 3.5 days to come back. So 7 days that summer we spent on bus. 7 days there in Vancouver. And it was a long trip, and crossing Canada coast to coast, made me establish a strong esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians, my brothers and sisters in the 50 states, North American Collective, throughout North America, and all who come to join us, all ALL, all who come, of course, all who come to join us, all who come to join us here in this new civilizational complex, because we're emergent, civilizational complex. We're not totally divorced, but we're not distinct from Western civilization. So that is just what you have to remember in the philosophical context. Of course, that we are a distinctive, not divorced civilizational complex, distinct but not divorced from Western civilization. And of course, that aspect of all the categories which you have, of course, to understand, and the plurality, of course, of all that is that you, I, and us, being that we are Canadians, Americans, American Canadians, North Americans, that we constitute integral citizens of this collective civilizational complex, which is not divorced but is distinct from Western civilization. So that is basically in many ways the fundamental aspects of course, of all the what we are, and is a fundamental collective civilizational complex. And see, you can go through this side, through here, and what is coming, going up and down, and this is where we go on the mountain here, a relay, my second home, all the way to the top. We come here every week, and this is Mount Royal here where we are approaching, and that is just something which we have now to get it now, and that is just something which we got to get doing on the left and the right, and we got to get on that drill, of course, to be emissive about, and to be beautiful yellow flowers, you know. Look at that. That is you. This is what I love, and I get some of that loving. Oh yeah, that's just something. I love these. These are so nice yellow flowers. This is a whole field of yellow here. See it out visibly, but this just quadruples my smile, and the bees love it, and I love it right at the, just don't pollute, eh? Don't leave. This is, it's no good, but see, now you can see the beautiful yellow, and the bees during the day, they're very busy here, and they just love these, the pollen, and I guess it's a good, beautiful yellow. My favorite flower color for flowers is yellow, although generally it's red, my favorite color. But when it comes to flowers, I'm so grateful that, see that beautiful yellow? See that beautiful yellow by the mountain, say let's go. All I do is geopolitics and rock and roll. All I do is geopolitics and that rock and roll, so that you be on the road, so that you see. For the butchers and the bakers, and the nurses and the doctors, firefighters, plumbers, electricians. Gotta be and gotta see. Some of the welders gotta live. And that you be, you gotta see. For the left or right in harmony. And you know you gotta be on the steps, on the left, on the right ready to sight, on the left ready to bite, for the bite. For the bite ready to sky, for the satellite still I ride. I rock and roll, I'm good at that. I'm an aspie, but I'm good at rock and roll, and geopolitics and fitness, geopolitics and rock and roll. That's what I'm good at. Basically, that's what I do the most, you know. Fundamentally, that's my kingdom, my realm, my domain. Sports, fitness, dancing is my favorite sport, and rock and roll, you know. Fitness, rock and roll, that's basically 24/7. So yeah, celebrating. See these rocks, what you see now here, these are rocks out on the mountain. Now we're atop the mountain, but you can even ascend further, right? And now when you look down, you can see how far that is. And now they come from, see, they're mounting the mountain. See, they're coming in. So now, then we go down like that. So here's the Three Peak Mountain, which can be seen afar off. And in yesterday's video, I was miles and kilometers away southwest from here, and the camera pointed towards here. So of course this is the rocks of the mountain, and the rock of the mountain here is of course where we have it now, and where we get it to get on that domain and that plurality, and that's just how we do, you know, and how we rock and roll it together again. Please don't pollute, because we got rabbits, flora, fauna. We got rabbits here. See the rock? Lots of rabbits, chipmunks, squirrels, chipmunks, rabbits, raccoons, skunks. I guess. So we got a lot of flowers. So we're trying to preserve here, right in the midst of the urban jungle, we have this mountain, right? Right in the midst, the three-peak mountain system lies between quite in between the east and the west, slightly south, way south, as you can see from the top. But it's right there. It's right here, and this is what we got. And we got the mountain, and you got the mountain, I got the mountain, we got the mountain, and sometimes we go atop, and sometimes we go roundabout, and that's basically what it is. And we take different routes, eh? Sometimes we go by the stairs. Usually we come by here by these stairs, but today I don't feel like taking these stairs. Neither the other ones. I feel like going like roundabout, making a full semicircle on the western part of Mount Royal proper, because Mount Royal is also the three peak mountains called Mount Royal. It has Westmount and Ultramount, right? So now I'm just gonna discuss a bit about Asperger's. Autism is, again, not a disease. It is a neurological mental divergent condition. Makes me and other Aspies predisposed to certain difficulties, because our brains are different, and again, the cause is inconclusive. It could be hereditary, genetic, hereditary. It could be either a factor of genetic, that is biological hereditary factor, or it could be, of course, not just genetic hereditary. It could, of course, be the factors that are related to the environmental factors. So it's not conclusive, and it's not a disease. And where we have to draw the line basically is when Aspiness or Aspies are characterized as evil, malicious, bad, or negative. That's a no. We can be odd, strange, bizarre, and awkward. Yes, that's not a crime. That's legal, And some Aspies do get in trouble because social awareness. Sometimes we, without knowing intentionally, that we breach certain laws and public, stuff like that. It's of course, it can happen, It can happen. It can certainly happen that can be so in the domain. That can be so, of course, projectionally to be so. So that is, of course, something which can be, that can be so. So if not, of course, the categories of all the domain, of course, where we are now to be in the appellation, of course, that we are today. And we made a lot of progress in the 21st century. There's still a lot of progress to be made, especially when it comes to the unemployment. The employment levels, the unemployment rather, for my community, which is again less than 1%, so it's a tiny small community. It is so big. It is 80%. 4 out of 5 Aspies are unemployed. 4 out of 5 Aspies are unemployed. 4 out of 5. Look at this, beautiful. Isn't that gorgeous? Yeah, I love it. That's nice. Big bush. 80% of Aspies are unemployed, eh? That's 11 times higher than for your unemployment levels. For every one of you, who are the vast majority, the neurotypicals constitute 99% of the population, is us Aspies 11 times. And the high depression and suicidal rates and isolation and dropouts, high school dropout is way higher for Aspies, about 7 times, 6 or 7 times for people with Asperger's and autism generally. And from higher education, from college or university, it's also kind of the same as high school. So the high dropout rates. So those are pretty much the 4 problems which arise, which the community faces generally. There's sub, of course, categories, but generally those are the 4 main problems. So high depression and suicidalness. And again, I was depressed and suicidal. What got me out of depression, I'm celebrating today. 8 years since I crossed Canada, coast to coast. In 2017, August, went with my anonymous friend in Vancouver, BC, to the Pacific. And then we came in September. We went by train. It took from Montreal to Halifax. It was 25 hours and 44 minutes. More than a day train ride, a long train ride, but very worthy and very nice, very beautiful. It was so nice. And that event made me establish a strong esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians. And I said, wow, so many things to see, to do across this great country. Canada, the Dominion, but the King is absent. It's time for the Republic. We should have had republic since the turn of the millennium. December 31st, 1999, that is January 1st, 2000. Should have said bye-bye to the King of England and yes, because you know our Prime Minister, Uncle Connie pledged allegiance to the King of England and his heirs. Uncle Connie and all Prime Ministers pledged allegiance to the King of England and his heirs. Look at hey, look at that. I just love it. This is really, really, what? So much beauty here. Oh, look at that. Colors. I just love it. Oh yeah, so beautiful. Just gorgeous, love it. Oh, they did it here from that side to that side. Vivid colors put together, vivid colors. Colorful flowers, that is vivid. So nice, I love it, and embellishes my march, and beautification of the public space is gonna be certainly something which we're gonna invest and we're gonna do, and we're gonna rock and roll, you know, beautification of the public space, something which we're gonna do and rock and roll with that 24/7 for the 63, for the firefighters, plumbers, public workers, change the aqueducts, the sewers, always for the construction workers, the bakers, the truckers, the nurses, the doctors, firefighters, rock and roll 24/7, and another beautiful flower that's there in the corner, and just love it. So here at Blue Ridge Crescent. So that was a bit of a philosopher, as a theorist, as a philosopher, as an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst, theorist, thinker, and strategist. And I say that, yeah, we should have been a republic long ago, my brothers and sisters. And it's our new prime minister is the old one, Justin, and all of them. We don't pledge allegiance to the Constitution and the people, citizens of Canada, but they pledge allegiance to the king, a hereditary king and queen and his heirs. If you check the Pledge of Allegiance, Connie pledged allegiance to the King of England and his heirs. The king is absent. The king is absent. It's time for the republic. I'm no separatist in Quebec. That's a geopolitical question here. I would vote no, but I guess the thing that I would like is that if Quebec would separate, that would totally disappear. There would be no mention whatsoever of the King of England. But it's time for the republic, eh? It's time for the republic. It's time for the republic, you know. It's time for the republic, you know. It's time for the republic, the constituency of the republic, and that's just what it's time to do, you know, in the dimensions of where we are now, to be live and to love and to have. We're in an emergency, a crisis. There's a possibility of a financial collapse, not just Canada, other countries are at risk, United States as well, but maybe even a global financial collapse with debt and other things. And we're going to get into geopolitics and just going to finish. Well, I meant to say financially. Of course, myself, I'm stressed, and when I see the flag, this is, I gotta show mine, and it's always, here we got that Canada tatted up. I basically have the flag tatted on me. So here's needs a little bit of red, but it's the Canadian Armed Forces. We gotta rock and roll with that, and you know, we're at tough times now, so that is always something which I gotta be mindful of course, of all the brothers and sisters who choose to put that uniform, of course, as I have been calling for years, for the formation of a vast public-private partnership, North American Collectif, NATO integrated, and maybe expanded NATO for the Dragon Army, aka via the protocols, new 911, Dragon Army, Total Dragon 911, North American Collective SSD, Security Service and Defense protocols, and I'm going to touch upon those as I touch. It's initiatives, basically, which are fundamentally public-private partnerships. They relate basically to my dream, the Dancing Goddess and the Dragon Kingdom, which is fundamentally a call for a public-private partnership. My dream, the Dancing Goddess and the Dragon Kingdom, is fundamentally a call for a public-private partnership. And now that I feel a bit of it's getting chillier, I got that long sleeve. And you know, as we go through the months, November, you see, during 3 main months, from like June, July, August, September, then it starts diminishing. The amount of people that come to the mountain, I meant to say. The amount of people that come to the mountain, that's what I meant. So you see, sometimes I come and I'm like alone. I'm the only one who goes to the top of the mountain during like December, January, sometimes February, when it's snowing or snowstorm or cold. I'm the only one in the winter. Let's check parts of my video. So what I meant to say is that you see, as the season decreases, so are the amount of people, but way considerably down, because sometimes there's, you know, so much, it's hot, and it's like June, July, August, those 3 main months mainly. And then it starts in September. Now it starts to diminish the amount of people that go. And then in October it starts to diminish. Then it kind of goes abruptly after Halloween. It kind of goes whoop, down. November, December, January, February, those 4 months, there's not a lot of people. So here we are, we got a little of that. Military drills. My brothers and sisters got those 4 black trucks. I can't say if they're black or white or red, but it could be green for all I know. And interesting that they look the same. And we gotta get on that drill for the Canadian Armed Forces. I encourage you all to workout, train, exercise, of course. And you know that I created a workout training program system, which I have been ever working to call for it to be involved of all the security forces, as we're gonna involve, of course, in the Dragon Army complex, for the proposition, of course, to do the General War Integrated Total Body Training System, aka the Dragon Army workout. And of course that is my workout training program system, which I created, made and designed, of course, to go hand in hand with a scenario, of course, wherein that scenario was, of course, the organization, of course, of it in 2019, when I predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration, which I'm gonna discuss in a bit. But now I'm just gonna go back to discussion on Asperger's, autism, HFA, high functioning autism, for 5 minutes or so. So it's not a disease. That's why one has to be fully comprehensive of, it's not a disease. And because I remember I had many jobs, but I lost them in a few months, a few weeks. But somebody was whispering to the orgasm and said, yeah, you know, that's a disease. No, it's not a disease. It's a neurological mental divergent condition. And it's just a difference, you know, of the way we process information. And social cues can sometimes be more difficult. Social cues can sometimes be more difficult. So social cues, social understandings, the dynamics, the social cues can be more difficult, and we can understand sometimes all the social dynamics where we have them now and where we operate them, of course, in the concordiate, you know, to be. And that looks like an eye here. Ancient Egyptian, Eye of Horus. Somebody drew a drawing there. Interesting, or just because somehow the shape came in. So, as I lived many past lives, many incarnations, I'm also a mystic, and sometimes was born a man, a woman, a woman, a man, a woman, a man, a woman, a man, a man, a woman, a woman, a man, man, a woman, a woman, a man, man, a woman, 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 a woman, a man. And you get that 50-50 now from ancient Egypt. That was the priestess Pythia, who orated the great Rethria to the Kyrgyz. I was the priestess Pythia, who orated the great Rethria to the Kyrgyz in a past life. I was the priestess Pythia, who orated the great Rethria to the Kyrgyz in a past life, and many past lives, incarnations. And read George Patton, Three Glass Darkly. One of my favorite poems is where he discusses his own reincarnations, but he only mentioned his male ones, masculine ones. And George Patton was my wife in a past life, and I was also his. So once me and George Patton, we were husband and wife. I was his wife, and once I was husband. So in many 2,600 years ago or so, and vice versa. So yeah, I'm also a mystic, but today, in this 19th of September, it is the year of darkness, November 18, 2025, where that parallel self build, create supercomputers, satellites, microchips, gadgets, all things to do with telecommunications and satellites, computer networks, and sats and antennas, and all things of science and technology. I also have Asperger's, and also had a pretty tough road until got established in the science and tech business. A late bloomer, late in age, and had our own share of trouble, as I did, due to Asperger's, But there's a blessing in the curse. So Asperger's, again, where we have to draw the line is where when somebody characterizes as evil, bad, negative, or malicious, which is not. It's not evil. It's not bad. It's not evil. It's not bad. It's not negative. It's not malicious. It's just different, odd, strange, bizarre, right? So those are the characteristics. Those are the characteristics. Those are its characteristics. And those characteristic traits can certainly be odd, right? Can certainly be strange. But again, they are not bad or evil or negative. They are strange, but not bad, evil, or negative. And there's no medication, you know. For Asperger's, you cannot medicate Asperger's because Asperger's is not a disease, right? We can work on the symptoms. Correction, I don't even use symptoms. People use symptoms, but I use characteristics and traits, the words, to replace the word symptoms. I gotta give a shout out to my anonymous friend for gifting me 2 books on autism, and they have some chapters on HFA, high functioning autism, which is Asperger's basically. And one book specifically, which was loaned 4 times because it was a library loan. I gotta recommend it to all because I appreciate it so much, and I learned about my own vulnerabilities and how Asperger's can be taken advantage of, and we can, you know, because of how our brain processes some information different, we could be vulnerable, you know, in certain positions, or compared to the hive mind and the group think and all those things, which kind of we are different, and thus we don't fully process that too well and can be problematic, you know, such as losing employment or friends and stuff like that. It's called Appreciating Asperger Syndrome. Appreciating Asperger Syndrome. It's a great book, super good. And I learned how, you know, we have to build bridges, small, medium, large, extra large, you know. It takes two to tango, and I don't have resentful feelings, antagonistic feelings, negative feelings towards or versus you, the 99% of the population, the neurotypicals. I'm willing to build bridges, and we have to work together. And some Aspies can bring a lot of good things to the table, like myself, parallel to those trillions of kisses and rock and roll and marching steps. My Trinity of theory is my dream, which is fundamentally to fuse Canada and the United States into the Imperial Democratic Republican complex via mass public-private partnership. And please don't give me the Aspies who are millionaires, billionaires, you know, who are like my astrological brother. I love Bill Gates, come to the mountain for the world peace treaties. And of course, for the consequential, of course, understanding that being that Aspies, we are at 80% unemployment. For somebody who mentioned, you know, to mention the Aspies who are millionaires or billionaires, which are so few compared to the fact that and if you are an Aspie who's a millionaire, billionaire, hire also Aspies and work to help the Aspie community, you know, because 80% unemployment is still persistent. It's getting better, but it's still a work to be done because we are different. So for us, sometimes we can be direct, straightforward, or we can seem abrasive, or our mannerism. We have these ritual routines also, which can be pretty rigid, and we have what's called special interest. Some call them obsessive interest, but I don't use the word obsessive. Obsessive is more for a neurotypical perspective, because when I do geopolitical analysis for hours and hours and hours without realizing that I'm doing it with such intensity to navigate different news outlets from Montreal, Quebec, in French, Canadian, different news outlets, left, right, and center, and United States, left, right, and center, and then Mexico, and then Europe, and then beyond. From the world is one, from India and from China, and to get, because that's what encompasses geopolitics. It is worldwide, global, and every day, every hour, even there's geopolitical events. It's like just geopolitics never sleeps, just like money, because of course there's always, of course, events. You know, there's always events, of course, to get doing on that, and to get doing on that rock and roll when you go. So that's just the complementary fact, of course, where we are now. in their interposition, of course, of all the dynamics where we are complementary to the fact that geopolitics is always like a rotation, like the sun always shines, always, so the sun always, there's always a sunset and a sunrise, there's always a sunset and a sunrise, so being that there's always a sunset and a sunrise, that is, of course, always, which it is the constitution thereof of geopolitics, that it is a 24/7 event. It is always going on. Geopolitical events always are transpiring, right? Whether of a minor, small, detailed, bigger event, and major events can happen, such as another major event on the horizon could be, of course, the China invading Taiwan, right? So China invading Taiwan could be another perspective on the horizon, in terms of geopolitics, and that is my field, my domain, of course, to the point in time that we have, of course, to be in the domain appellative, of course, the plurality, of course, of the situational awareness where we are now, to be, of course, always concomitant to existing realities in terms of the geopolitical world and the crises which we are on now, which I have predicted back in 2019, which I'm going to get into. So once again, of course, the domain, of course, is the aspect, to finalize on Asperger's. It's not an illness, it's not a disease. No, it is a neurological mental divergent condition, and that neurological mental divergent condition makes one predisposed to special interests. And we can have, for example, repeating words 2-3 times. We can also have echolalia and personal space, or you might see subject and just inspect it like this. I do that in the market, in the grocery stores, certain objects. I just check the details, small details, where it's from, and I've been doing this for years and years, even before the trade war commenced, even before the trade war commenced. I've been doing this for a year, of course, even before the trade war commenced, and that is just, of course, the appellation where we are now, to be, of course, on the domain name where we are, to get now, of course, inside, of course, all of the realities which, as individual sovereign citizens, myself as an individual ASPI, and the whole community which at large suffers from main problems, and the problematics which we suffer are, of course, the 4 main problems, So all those 4 main problems are, of course, categorized in the dimensions where, of course, the lack of employment. So, of course, this lack of employment is the categorization of 80%. The lack of employment is at 80%, So being, of course, that it is the 80% is, of course, something which we have, of course, to categorize and, of course, to symbolize in all the domain affectations. So, of course, being that it is now in all of the domains, that it's across North America, domains by domains, in this point of reference, philosophical point of reference, I mean as an overall in all the industries, basically domains, economical employment domains, right? Whether sports, whether baking, whether industries of entertainment, it's overall, it's 80% for the ASPI community, right? So basically, of course, that we, of course, are 1%, so that is just what it is with that. Basically, that they are 1%. So meaning, of course, that they're 1% is something, of course, which facultates all these integrative aspects where we are now, in this domain, So that is just something which we have, of course, to do. And of course, it is something which we appellate to do. And the work, it's a great work which has to be concomitantly, of course, resolved, and this great work has to be done together by building bridges. And of course, so those building of the bridges are, of course, a continuity in a continuous manner, which of course are to be appellated in all the domain names where we are now. So all the domain names, that is the industries, where to name the industries would now be specifically to have sequential industry, but the overall employment, I don't want to be too intellectual about this, but there's different industries. What I mean to say is there's a variation, right? So in XYZ ABC industry, there's more ASPIs who are employed. And no, not all ASPIs are, of course, good at computer science, Not all ASPIs are, of course, good at computer science. So not all ASPIs are good at computer science. Not all ASPIs are good at computer science. Not all ASPIs are good at computer science, Not all ASPIs are good at computer science. That is something which you have, of course, to categorize and understand. It's 20%, right? It's still 1 out of 5. Still 1 out of 5 is 20%. But that 20% is, of course, 20%. It's still higher than the neurotypicals, because the neurotypicals who are very good at computers, you stand at about between 1 and 4%. So it's about 5 times more, or 6 times more, 7, 8 times more, 10 times more when it comes to Asperger's. But again, the percentage is around 20%, 1 out of 5. I'm not so good at computers. In a parallel life, I also have Asperger's since I'm good. But in this life, I'm not that good. I'm okay, average, very below average even. But I'm good at geopolitics and math percentages, calculation, for example, to calculate the consumption of gas and the cost. And I know for a fact in February 2020, the gas, of course, consumption has increased. The gas, of course, consumption has increased particularly. So, of course, being that it has increased, that means that it sucks out of the consumer's wages, right? Because the wages have stagnated. So the majority of the population are financially stressed, struggling because of that. Because of that. So that is, of course, something which, of course, has to be categorized in all the internal matters where we are now. So that is just, of course, the situation where we are today, right? Because the cars, now, see how my brain is, sometimes I march and I look at the cars and I make a calculated estimation. So that calculative estimation is, of course, prudent of all the cars that exist now in circulation. And see, it would have been full here in June, July, August. It would have been lots of people. Now there's less and less. Some people came, but there will be people, going way more people than there are today. So suffice it to say, right? Suffice it to say, of course, that suffice that to say is, of course, that the conquer mentally, of course, is the sufficient part of the appellation where we have now into be in concordat with all the things which we have. So of course that is just how we have to be, that is just something which we are, and that's where we are. Still. Yeah. So I love coming here, and that's just, I was laughing as I need to laugh at myself because I'm different, and Aspies, we are different. We're individual Aspies, we're different, but, because I could have calculated I could have gone on and on and on about the mathematical calculation of the cost of gas for the next hours or so remaining hour of this video, and for all of it, the videos, and I could do this hours and hours and hours a day, just calculating mathematics percentages, just calculating mathematics percentages, Still. Still. Still vérité. So that is just Asperger's, and now we go into the darkness. Again, I don't recommend people to come this route Stay where the light is. 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 Il y a. Il y a. So now we go up, and just wanted to stretch a bit there. Break on your left side of it goes. And of course we got signalize and see it as we go here in the dark. So we gotta get on that drill, and I love it here in the darkness. My mistress is a fierce one. She calls me, hey, my ass be cuckold. Marry me, marry me, marry me, marry me, fierce mistress of the empire, of the free, the brave, the strong, the loving, till the end, I guess, my friends, till the end. And for Asperger's, I was laughing because my mind is different, and I was about to calculate and continue calculating the dynamics of the calculations for and with the gas consumption, and with the gas consumption, which would have been, of course, inadvisable for me to proceed and just go on and on and on about that specific topic, at least at this point in time, right, where we converge to be as we go up and up and up and up and up and up the mountain. And we gotta check out those roots because we're in the darkness, and the mistress submits in a ways that we gotta submit, and shows us the mysteries in a ways that we gotta acknowledge her dominion as she is goddess nature, sometimes our friend. And the air here is just so fresh on the mountain, and you know, you lose some of your illusions when you come here. At least I do personally. And I love coming here on the mountain. I just love coming here on the mountain. Just love it. Coming here on the mountain. I just love it. And it gives me a great refreshing vitality and also reverence, you know, for forces beyond my speck of dust that I am. And regardless of that, So we're gonna finalize on Asperger's. It's not a mental illness, not an illness. It is a divergent mental condition, neurodivergence, and we can be pretty strange, pretty awkward, and but we're not bad. It's not bad. It's not evil. It's not negative. It's not malicious. That's where we have to draw the line when, of course, somebody equates Asperger's as being malicious, bad, evil, or negative. That is where we have, of course, to finalize and reject that categorization. That we have to make those, to draw the line, and distinction has to be made within and for that specific characterization, right? Because it's not bad, it's not evil, it's not negative. It's not bad, it's not evil, it's not negative. It is different. But this difference can be reconciled, and we can build bridges with you, the 99% of the population, which are neurotypicals, and it's bridging these bridges and putting on the table, because Aspies, again, we're not all good at computer science. Some are good at other things, and we can excel in certain things. And my domain, realm, kingdom, really is parallel to sports and fitness, dancing being my favorite sport, parallel to being the priestess of the empire with those kisses, dragons spitting that fire, geopoliticking. It's geopolitics, and that's where we're gonna finalize it, and of course accord that we can build bridges, and it takes some understanding, and I have to work myself on being careful not to breach personal space, to get too close if I converse, not to be, because some things we just don't get. When people are not interested, you have to let people like me who are Aspies know directly, I'm not interested, and that's it, or that's it, the conversation is over and bye, stuff like that, because we just can't read too well those social cues. They can come very difficult, and they can be very difficult for us, for us Aspies. They can be more difficult. And of course, here we are in the year of darkness, 18th of November 2029, where I live in a parallel self, also an Aspie. I build centers of supercomputers, satellites, telecommunications, total surveillance, and every year since October 2025, for more than 4 years, I build superstructures for NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty organizations, such as this one, for total radio antenna, 3G, 4G, 5G, 6G, even 7G, smartphone, and for total security, total service, total defense. I build satellites which are able to zoom in cars and pick up the conversations and intercept texts, intercept conversation, but it's only used for security, right? And warranted security, not unwarranted, and of course with ethics and morality, for the greater good, basically, for the greater good. And I build those super satellites and have been building, and in the past months I launched the most in that year of darkness, 18th of November 2029, across NATO. I spent most of my life living between Canada, Germany, United States, and Israel. Israel in that parallel timeline is in NATO, as you know that. Prior to October 7th, I was advocating for both. So in that parallel life, I built antennas, satellite supercomputers, microchips. I code everything to do with science and technology, such as that. I think that's 4G or 5G. There. So I build, create, construct all things of telecommunications technology, such as this one here, and that's basically that I do fundamentally as an independent. But I'm not independent there. I work in consortium and a mass public-private partnership, and so I wanted to say that as parallel to this life, as I am an independent artist, athlete, and geopolitical theoretical analyst and theorist who's gonna go into geopolitics now. We're gonna finalize the discourse in 2 minutes about Asperger's. Just give Aspies a chance. We have 4 problems which press our community the most. It is high unemployment, 80%, 4 out of 5. It's unacceptable. High depression and suicidal rates are also high, and I lived it years and years ago. I almost took my lights out. I survived, and I now fully accept and try to work on my characteristics, as this difference is not evil, bad, or negative, or malicious. It's just different, right? So that is just while we are in the categories, of course, that we are to be now in the domain where we are here in the plurality, of course, of all the life-affirming situations where we are now, to be dominion and to have established our coming of establishment of our kingdom. So those are the four main problems. And lack of friends. For me, I have the solution. Hey, don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. Friends with benefits only, don't waste my time and I won't waste yours. Friends with benefits only, do not waste my time, I won't waste yours. Do not waste my time, I will not waste yours. That is the solution for me. So that is where we're gonna be with that. Don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. And that's solution for me, my friends. And that's about it for that drill. And that is just how we're gonna be and how we're gonna go from that drill on, and how we're gonna perspectivize it, and how we're gonna influence it, and how we're gonna get our domain to rock and roll, in all the civilizational sphere which we have as a privilege. And friends with benefits, for me, that's the solution. We tend to lose lots of friends. We don't have lots of friends. Or pledge your legions to our family, either that or friends with benefits only. And of course the other one is, of course, the lack of employment, high depression and suicidal rates, and very high dropout rates. I have a high school diploma myself, but I dropped out of higher education. I went to some college, but I dropped out. So I guess geopolitics was always my special interest, because I have a reference letter where I wanted to go to the Kingston Military College. I wanted to go attend the Kingston Military College, and I didn't attend the Kingston Military College. And I guess you get military colleges from past life incarnations, and that's how we drill it sometimes. We just gotta be influence about and be confident about the domain and all the perspectives where we are now, which we're going to switch, and we're going to discuss geopolitics. So geopolitics, leave the baggage at the door. Of course, it is my special interest. I spend hours and hours and hours a day, sometimes even hours a day, without, of course, realizing that, of course, I do spend so much time in the morning, afternoon, and when I get back, that's what I do. Of course, it is a geopolitics on the concorded, of course, that I do geopolitical relations. And of course, I am an independent theorist, analyst, and of course, credit, of course, the geopolitical conflagrations where I do now, of course, to be on that rock and roll, to be here now. So, of course, all those domains and the names, of course, which affect the geopolitical aspects of our life, of course, being that we are together now, of course, to be doing, and of course to understand fully that geopolitics is a whole universe in itself, right? It encompasses a vast array of different dimensions, different areas of study, such as statistics, politics, international relations, history, social, cultural, finance, economics. It's a whole universe, right? It's a lot of different interconnected sectors of study which can concord in geopolitics, right? Or, for example, statistics, labor statistics, and conflicts, and history, and population, and geography, especially, of course. That's the word comes from that, but it's way broader. It's a whole universe, right? The geopolitics is from geos politica, so it's, of course, geos, a spatial location, from the Greek word for a location, and that is a domain, right? A habitat, or a domain, or space, basically a geographical position, geographical location. And political is from the word polity, right? The polity of a nation state, as they had in ancient Greece, where a democracy, republic, or Sparta was kind of unique, because they had a dual kingship and military kind of councils with the ephors, and they had their rituals and the oracle of Delphi, and they were kind of unique. It was kind of a militaristic with the Helots, and their citizenship were to Spartans, and they had a semi-racial component, well, kind of a racial component to it, kind of militaristic, military dual, very unique. Sparta's government was unique, not to fetishize it or anything like that, but I don't think there's any other examples of the system that Sparta was built as a military dominated, war-oriented military society. Although paradoxically, women had paradoxical, bizarre things such as you wouldn't associate, right, in our at least 20th century, maybe more in 21st century, but sexual liberty and sexual freedom. And from what we know, I guess this is a controversial part. Supposedly they could have multiple partners outside of marriage. I guess we would call it today cuckold. cuckold, C-U-C-K. I guess I'm the greatest cuckold in the universe myself, for the mistress, my forest, but General Dragon nonetheless. But I guess it wasn't like today, it was different, more ritualized, or for like physical activity, basically to stay fit and stuff. It wasn't like, you know. And of course that is just the sounds of nature here. So I'm not going to go into a divergent discussion of Sparta per se, but Sparta is certainly is a unique civilizational reality, which within the Greco civilization, it's a Greek civilization, but I guess they're parallel, like Sparta in many ways. So they had a dual kingship E4 system with military barracks, and you know, they had a whole gymnasium system and education. I'm not going to go on into Sparta, so whatever the case may be, that's from the word politics. So that's geopolitics. So leave the baggage at the door, forget that, but it comes that my strength in geopolitics, where it lies, and I'm going to say now, is due to this, I guess, the curse turning into a blessing of living with HFA, Asperger's, and high functioning. Asperger's are known as HFA, and Asperger's and HFA, high functioning autism. So that is, of course, the peculiar inclinations, or the blessing from the curse, if you will. So I predicted, where we're going to start is with my prediction back in 2019 that we are headed towards an international conflagration, as I am here at top mountain. The mountain right there is the Belvedere. You can see the lights of the Belvedere Conjonac, and we're going to pass there in the back, and going to go get a little bit of that hydration, and then we're going to go around the body, but we're going to see the city from another point. See there, I don't want to go there, but that's there where you see the lights. That's basically here at the top where I am now, is the headquarters of the coming of the empire of the Democratic Republic of the 63, which we're going to fuse Canada and United States, or the Dream, the Dancing Goddess, and the Dragon Kingdom, which is fundamentally a call for a public-private partnership. It's fundamentally a call for a public-private partnership across the North American Collective, of course, to be civilizational foundation where we are now to be. So I predicted what's happening now back in 2019. October, November, I predicted what's happening now back in 2019. So I predicted what's happening now back in 2019. October 2019, I predicted that there is going to be an international conflagration. So back, I have the proof to back it up as I gaze upon the stars now in the sky. I think I see Scorpio. Sounds of nature. I see stars. I counted 44, but I guess there's way more than that. There's trillions, eh? Well, I think I saw a Scorpio, you know. I think I saw a Scorpio with that, and that's just something where I gotta get seeing on that Scorpio to get it on that rock and roll, man. Every time we get it. So we're gonna go get a little bit of hydration now, and that is just something which we gotta be, and something which we gotta do, and it's something which, of course, we have to proceed. You know, the enumerations where we cannot count the stars per se, because there's many of them. So here we are at the top of the mountain, headquarters of the Dancing Goddess and the Dragon King, you know, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, for the brave, the strong, the loving, and the free, for the brave, the strong, the loving, and the free, for the brave, the strong, the loving, and the free, always for the brave, the strong, the loving, and the free, and the loving, and the free. And that's what we gotta get doing with that, and we gotta get doing on that dimensions, you know. So that is something which we gotta get doing like that, and that is something which, of course, we have to be concomitantly about in all the domain where we have this integrative aspect that we are now closer than ever to World War III. For all I know, you know, it could be the invasion of China can invade Taiwan, you know, the unresolved conflict. So that was, of course, my main premise, was, of course, that China did not, of course, resolve its conflicts with Taiwan, just as so other countries were not fully resolved their conflicts from the 20th century. That is, of course, just where we are now, and that is just something where we have, of course, to be situated, of course, in the domain names where we are thrust to be, of course, organized and disciplined in this matter of geopolitics, where we, of course, we have to concord. That's something where we got now to get it on the go, and that's something where we have, of course, to be concomitantly, of course, to be in the domain name where we are now atop the mountain. And that's just where we gotta get hydration, you know. That is something which I gotta be, of course, admiring and, of course, appellating, that this is the hydration which we're gonna salute those builders who build it, and those builders, of course, took brains and muscle for us to have running water here atop the mountain. See this water right atop the mountain. Imagine the brains and muscle required for it to be built. So it's gonna wait 5 seconds to clear, and quite amazing, eh, to get it all the way up here. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and good job. I always meditate how it was done. Brain and muscle, I guess. Oh yeah, oh yeah, that is where we are, top of the mountain. This is the Belvedere there, Belvedere Conjurnac, the chalet that you see here, kind of with the lights there, that's the chalet. So I predicted what's happening now in a general manner back in 2019. In 2019, I predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration. International conflagration, meaning that I predicted that there was going to be, due to, so it was very more sophisticated academic intellectual, but mainly due to the fact that those countries did not fully resolve. Those countries did not fully resolve their of course conflicts. Their conflicts. So they did not fully resolve their conflicts from the 20th century, and of course due to the fact that they did not resolve their conflicts from the 20th century, they, of course, those conflicts were gonna get restarted. So they are gonna get restarted on that, and that is, of course, something which we're gonna have to be understanding of that. So that is, of course, all the understanding of the appellation where we are now to discuss this reality that I predicted what's happening now back in 2019. So I have proof. So I actually have the proof for what I just said. I have the proof. I have the video online, and of course that is the proof online where I predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration coming on the horizon. And look at those beautiful yellow flowers there. So I predicted that within, of course, a certain amount of time, that is, of course, a certain amount of time, which I said, of course, that is going to range within a few years, right? A few years. So, of course, that is something what we have, of course, to do. So my domain, of course, was because I said that due to these unresolved conflicts, we're going to restart. So, of course, because, of course, I said that they were going to restart, they were, of course, going to, and they have many ways restarted. See, here at the top of the mountain, usually when we come, when it's August or July, June, at this time there's way more people, but it's diminishing. Sometimes I come here, you can check my videos, and it's winter, it's winter, it's cold, it's in a snowstorm. I come here and I'm the only one. It's like a snowstorm. So it's a big snowstorm. In front of one of my videos, I think from February. So I'm here and there's nobody. Just me and the snowstorm, And that is, of course, where we are now atop. atop the top, right? So just gonna watch it for the youth because they're playing. But that is my favorite skyscraper here. Wait, a pyramid, see? Wait, it's kind of blacked out a bit. At the top, usually that pyramid there, see? Yeah, that is where it is, the pyramid. That is my favorite skyscraper here. But I don't know, the top is not lit today. And the other day was not lit, 4 days ago was not lit. So it's been a few days, at least 4 days since it's not lit. See? There it is, the top. I wonder how come. I hope he's gonna fix it, but that's a beautiful skyscraper. So here it is for the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, firefighters, truckers, electricians, the plumbers, all those involved in the production, distribution of food, all those, of course, to be going on the go with that. And that is something which you gotta get doing. So sometimes I see when you come here, you see a little bit of flashes. So I believe you see actually the satellites who are passing. So because we're in altitude, right? So of course the satellites always pass, and they're at an altitude of about 500 kilometers, right? 500. Usually, and there's thousands of them. Kilometers altitude, 500. So that's very high up, basically, right? That's very high up. So that's what it is with that, and that's how we go. Yeah. I'm gonna stretch a bit and continue to go stretch the back. So here it is, the headquarters of the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom. So I love going inside deep inside the forest, and I love coming here. And sometimes I come here, I get flashes of reincarnations, you know, past lives. Sometimes I was born a man or woman, and many past lives. Sometimes I was a priestess by ancient Egypt, and sometimes I get it now. So that's what it is. And here it is, big metropolis, and we're surrounded by a big river, eh? All the river surrounds the whole island. You can't really see the river, but it surrounds. So for the butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, firefighters, plumbers, electricians, the welders, construction workers, firefighters, all those involved in the production, distribution of food for the armed forces, of course. All those, of course, now who get it on the go. And we're going to get in deeper, and that's just how we're going to get doing with that. And that is something which we have, of course, to do, you know. Yeah, so that is something which we got to get doing with that, man. But this, I got to give a shout out. Whoever did this beauty here, this beauty here, beautiful, whoever it is, this beautiful here is something which we got, and something which we got to go doing with that. And that's how we go, man, you know. That's just something what you gotta get doing, man, and that's a beautification of the cities, you know, something which is super interested, and yours truly has that deep interest in that, and in the coming of our empire, we'll have the big beautification of the cities. So again, you gotta leave the baggage at the door. We're gonna discuss geopolitics, and of course, I predicted what's happening now. Back in 2019, I predicted what's happening now. So I predicted what's happening now back in 2019 in October, and see, even now there's nobody on the stairs. Yeah, it is diminishing. It's noticeable today, although it's Friday. There should be way more people, and when it's August, July, June, sometimes we descend and there's so many people here on the stairs. So I'm taking the stairs. You can see sometimes in the other videos during the day, we're taking the stairs. We're gonna take by the side. So now I'm going by the side of the stairs, going a bit down. Again, we're going to go back up by the side because it's different sides of the mountain, right? But usually there's many people coming up and down when I come here. Now there's nobody, so there's less and less, and it's already started. I see it now. November is going to be way less, October also, but now it's September 19th, so it's starting to diminish because it's even chillier a bit today. So compared to 3 Fridays ago, a month ago, Fridays, usually there's a lot of people here. Even now I'm alone, see, here passing. And sometimes I come and I'm really alone on the mountain. But I'm not really alone. I mean, I have the flora, fauna, and I have the mistress and the mountain in terms of fellow human beings. But if I am a human being, because if I'm not, maybe I'm a cybernetic, maybe I wouldn't know if I would be a cybernetic force myself. If I would be a cybernetic force myself to get it on that go with that, but it was something which we haven't yet to be discovered in the future, when we have, of course, the cybernetic force or not. So, of course, whatever the complementary position is, we're going to go back to geopolitics. So, I have predicted what's happening now. I have the proof of my prediction. So, I have the videos to back up what I just said. So, I predicted, of course, what's happening now back in 2019 in October 17 specifically. I had posted my first video documenting the World War III scenario, and consequently I also created a workout training program system made, designed, and created to go with such as an event, such as a World War III scenario. And my workout training program system is, of course, officially titled the General War Integrated Total Body Training System. It is a total body training system which is simple, effective, and efficient. It requires no equipment. You could do it outside, outdoors, as I have been myself doing it, indoors and outdoors. I even live streamed it on Instagram and Facebook. I even live streamed it on Instagram and on Instagram and Facebook. On Instagram, on Facebook, I live stream it, and of course, that is on the civilizational complex where we are now. Of course, to be concomitant, of course, to be specific about all the specifications. Where I'm not gonna go into much details. I'm just gonna discuss it generally, of course, where we are now to be in the civilizational complex, where we are to be now on the left and on the right, and that is something which we have, of course, to be on all the levels of the plurality where we get and where we circumvent all the domain where we have that we are in a crisis, a geopolitical crisis and national economic crisis for Canada, and geopolitical as well. To have levels of crisis. So I predicted this coming international conflagration, World War III, based on several layers of parameters. One of those parameters was with that due to these unresolved conflicts, we're going to restart. In the 20th century. So these unresolved conflicts from the 20th century, we're going to restart in the 21st century. And of course, if you look, Russia-Ukraine is a conflict which really dates to the Cold War period, which lasted about almost 45 years. Some say 46. I put the Cold War duration between February or March 1947 till December 1991. March 1947 till December 1991. March 1947 till December 1991. So that Cold War duration was, of course, for me, almost 45 years. Some say 45, some say from 46 to 1991. December 26, 1991 was the official date of the end of the Soviet Empire, the USSR, United Socialist Soviet Republics, by Gorbachev's perestroika, right? So that was a major turning point event of the world, a geopolitical event of major proportion, just the perestroika event, when Gorbachev decided to dissolute and the Soviet Union split into Russia, the Federation of Russia Federation, Russian Federation, and 15 other countries, right? 15 other small countries, of which Moldova, Georgia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Belarus, and many other countries split from the Soviet Union in 1991, right? So that was a major geopolitical event of major proportions, Here's a nice place. You can see the city right here, see? The Hawkeye of Montreal, but I don't know what's the pyramid. Why it's not lit there. I hope nothing happened. I hope it's gonna get back into circulation. And there you can see the bridge. See the bridge and the island. So that's the pyramid there. But you see, it hasn't been lit. It's been 4 days that's like this. Beautiful city, eh? Quite gorgeous. I think there's football playing. Football, American football, Canadian football. Not soccer. I think that's what's the noise about there. McGill Stadium, something like that. I'm not sure, maybe. Anyways, this is the beauty of the city, and that's the favorite pyramid there. We're gonna go back into the mountain. Here's on the mountain on that, and that's what we're gonna get doing with that, and that's what we have to get doing on the go, to get it doing on that. So that is just the position where we are now to get it doing like that, and it's something which we have to be doing on the levels of the plurality of course the manifestation of where we are now as members of this societal plurality, where we are now in the domain names of all the circulation in which we have, of course, to be doing, so that is just the members where we are to be doing now in all the circumstantial positions of all the potential escalation and potential outright conflict between NATO and Russia. So we're gonna go back to 2019, just before I had COVID. I thought I was gonna die of COVID. February, I really died during COVID. It was February 2020, and it was like death, pestilence, and disease. I said, what's this? I thought I was gonna die, really. I said, oh, that's it for me, I'm dying. February 2020 till March 2020. So I thought that was it. I said, oops, I thought I was gonna die. And nobody knew that mid-February what COVID was. Only later it was named COVID. And even now today, we're supposedly more and more by the CIA's dictum and our organization, they called it that it's man-made. Yeah, it's a man-made, I guess, bioweapon, I don't know, I believe it was transmitted from snakes to human beings. I cannot rule out another possibility, because my belief that transmission to human beings was from snakes is not 100% proven. Some say pork, some say bats, some say snakes like me, some say insects, some say chicken, other from what's called zoonotic. Z-O-N-I-T-E-C. Zoonotic transmission. Basically transmission from animals to human beings. That's what that means, the word, technical word. But I don't know for sure. This I cannot rule out another possibility, but I had it and I got triple vaxxed, and I urge you all to keep the protocols of COVID as much as one can. And I don't know what caused COVID. I really don't know. I cannot rule out another possibility of what has caused COVID. So I can't rule out that it was caused by a bioweapon. That I can't rule out, of course. That it was caused, of course, by a bioweapon. And of course, that is, of course, all the appellation where we got, of course, to be in the domain, of course, where we are. And we got to get on that go, on the regionalization, of course, of all the domain where we are, of course, to be about. So all of that to say is that I don't know what caused COVID, but of course, I believe that it was, of course, that it was done via snakes, but I don't know for sure. So since I don't have 100% proof, I cannot rule out another possibility. Neither can most people. However, what I do know is that before COVID, I had created, made, and produced the workout training program system, the general war integrated total body training system, to go hand in hand with a possible World War III incoming in the coming years. I'm just going to discuss my workout a bit. So officially the name is General War Integrated Total Body Training System, also known as the Dragon Army workout. Officially, the Dragon Army workout. It is an efficient, effective workout training program system which requires no equipment. So these are the rules of the workout. You got to do 100 push-ups, 100 squats, 100 hogs, right? You cannot pause once you start the countdown. Once you start the countdown, you got 93 minutes, 44 seconds, and 9/11ths of a second, so almost 45 seconds. almost 45 seconds. The 9/11 of a second is basically, yes, to commemorate the 9/11 attacks, which was the only one and only time that NATO invoked Article 5. In its history, our military alliance, NATO, the only time was, of course, when the only time that NATO, the NATO military alliances, Article 5 was invoked was when we have had the 9/11 attacks. Other than that, it was never invoked. So here's the workout training program system, which the official title of the workout is, the technical official title is the General War Integrated Total Body Training System. That phrase, that 7 words, General War Integrated Total Body Training System, aka the Draconis workout, aka the Draconis workout. You got to do 100 push-ups, 100 squats, 100 hawks, push-ups and squats, 100 for each. That's 300 total. Once you start the countdown, you got to keep it in motion by marching, walking, jogging, or running fast pace. You got to keep it in motion. Marching, walking, running, jogging. You can do 13 repetitions max, 3 minimum, anywhere in between until you get to 100. And you got to march, jog, or run a minimum of 30 seconds in between. And of course, 13 and 3, they go together. 93 minutes and 44 seconds and 9/11 of a second. And of course, you cannot do more than 13 or 3. So those are the 4 main rules. So you cannot do more than that. 13 max, 3 minimum. So you can't do 15 and mark 15. You can do 15, but you can only mark 13. So you count 13, 4, 5, 6 until you get to 100 for the push-ups, for the squats, the hawks. So that's 300 total, and you gotta march, jog, run. It's a minimum actually of 31 seconds in between. So you can't, you can't, for example, do push-ups and then march 10 seconds and do squats. You gotta do 31 seconds, right, in between. So that's what you have to do. So that's usually, it takes about an hour to complete. It takes me anywhere between 44 minutes and 88 minutes. I think the longest was 88 minutes and 50 seconds, and the average is about an hour. So it's integrated. You integrate cardio, you integrate upper body, lower body. So it's a total, it's not necessarily meant for aesthetics, right? But it is increasing general overall fitness, right? And I perform myself more than 372 sessions. You can see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of my workout program system. It has a science, a beautiful simplicity of a science between it. But again, I have been able to continue to advocate for it to be across NATO member high schools, and as early as 7 years of age. As early as 7 years of age. As early as 7 years of age can be done. So as early as 7 years of age can be done. Early as 7 years of age. You can't do it before. So that's as early as 7 years of age. As 7 years of age, you know. That's, you can do it as early, men and women, and I advocated for it to be in high school, placed in the high schools, universities, armed forces, our RCMP, and security forces, police forces, to be, of course, integrated, to be done. The General Integrated Total Body Training System, aka the 300 workout, aka the Draconis workout. Several street names, and now back to my predictions. So I predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration on the horizon. Right? So I created and designed and produced that workout training program system to go with such an event as if there would be that reality coming. So that's where my workout training program system goes with that scenario. Basically, that we would need to mobilize the citizen, the population, and of course, in case of a World War III, which, are we in it? Are we in it? Are we not in it? Are we in it? It may be. Some say yes, some say it's on the horizon. Some say it has started actually on October 7th. Some say it has started October 7th, and now battle lines are being drawn. And again, before October 7th, I was advocating, of course, for Israel to join. Simultaneously, Israel and Mexico to join NATO before October 7th. Now we're going to see where that goes, where that's going to be the resolution or not. But before that, I call for NATO Project Genesis 33, for NATO's Genesis 33 project, you know, for NATO's Genesis 33 project, of course, to be conclusive about, of course, in all the plurality where we are now, to be, of course, integrated in all the domain, and of course the situational awareness now to be on the go, and of course to be on the plurality of the domain now. And of course that is of course the composition which of course I had made. And this composition was the creation of the General War Integrated Total Training System, which was made, designed, of course, and created to go with such a scenario. So that is the contribution which I contributed, I guess, to fitness development and health maintenance as my contribution for NATO, for Quebec, Canada, United States, is my workout, which I posted online, of course, and it's open for NATO, of course, for NATO. It was made specific for the citizens of NATO to be more in case of a thermonuclear war. You would have to encourage it, of course, and of course finance it. And of course the mobiliums where we have, of course, to finance that and mass finance my workout training program system. Internally, we have to, of course, put it here, of course, in the situational awareness that we are at the top of the mountain. And now we're gonna go down because that's the top and that's where we were, and now we're gonna get it. So here it is, headquarters of the dancing goddess in the Dragon Kingdom. We're gonna need to be super transformed in Montreal and into a super buy complex with the Pentagon, into a super SSD, Security Service and Defense Legion, as via my Dragon Army initiatives and the new 911 Dragon Army Total North American Security Service and Defense protocols. And I'm going to get into that after I continue discussing my predictions. So my prediction again was due to mostly, so it was more in depth, but one of the important points which I always mention is that I stated that many conflicts which are not resolved are going to recommence. Conflicts from the 20th century, from the Cold War to be specific, which the Cold War again lasted almost 45 years. Some say even more than that. Some say 46, from between 1946 to 1991. And I say I don't mind expanding it beyond 45 years. I don't mind. I don't really object. You want to say that the Cold War lasted 46 years? I don't mind. I do not object. However, my statement is that the Cold War lasted between 1947 March and 1991. You want to play, of course, around with a few months, a year or two, that's fine. I don't object. However, I state that it is between March 1947 and end of December 1991. Regardless, if you look at Russia, Ukraine, and Ukraine was not part of NATO, that is a conflict from the 20th century. Israel, Hamas. Hamas was, of course, an organization which was created, founded, of course, in the 1980s. They only took power 20 years later, 2 decades later, after its foundation of the Gaza Civil War in about 2007, with Fatah, the Fatah organization, when they took power, military, political power of Gaza, the Gaza Strip. The 2.5 million people, interestingly enough, is about the population of Montreal, my island. The population of Gaza is about the population of Montreal. The population of Gaza was estimated before, on October 7th, or just before, and now, I guess, less, but it was the same as the population of Montreal. And of course the Gaza Strip is the Gaza City and Rafah and other cities. So it was divided into 5. The Gaza Strip. So of course that is an unresolved conflict as well. And Pakistan and India, they almost clashed a few months ago again, and that's an unresolved conflict again. Russia, of course, and Ukraine, and potentially China and Taiwan is again a conflict from the 20th century. So these conflicts have reignited in many ways, if you see, from the 20th century. They did not finalize with a resolution. Now, yeah, we can go. That's the expansion of NATO in the post-Soviet, where the countries that were part of the Soviet bloc, not the Soviet Union, but the Soviet bloc, part of the Warsaw Pact. Many countries have joined NATO who were part before 1989, November, and the fall. It's called the November fall revolutions of 1989, right? The fall of the many socialist communist countries in Eastern Europe, in the Warsaw Pact and the Eastern Bloc, also known as the Eastern Bloc, of which the Berlin Wall, November 9, 1989, is a big example. When the East Germany, maybe I was born in Berlin, East or West, maybe I was right in between. regardless, that was my prediction. And now it's unfolding to what I have predicted geopolitically. Not necessarily that I'm a prophet or a seer, because I'm being reborn, but as an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst, theorist, philosopher, and thinker for the North American Collective. Again, we are a civilizational complex here in North America that is not fully divorced, but is distinct from Western civilization, right? So we're not divorced, but we're distinct from Western civilization. So we have to have this type of adjustation, if you will, or complementary fuse United States via my DRT. But for the 21st century, the pro-labor and love universal revolutionary centrism, what I call the universal revolutionary centrism, is North American centric and is public-private partnership based. It can be expanded in NATO because it's always North America, NORAD, NATO, North American Collective and NATO complex, and for world peace as well I am, but now it's unfolding as I have predicted this in a general manner. And of course, that's where we are today, also with our financial stress. So now I'm just gonna take a moment, a few minutes actually, to discuss, to revise that, and again encourage all to work out regularly and keep the public hygienic protocols. You know, the public hygiene of COVID, and you know, you got some bacteria, some germs, and that are resolutely, of course, yeah, well, we know, you know, COVID could have been a bioweapon and XYZ. Maybe we will never know, as one of my neighbor says. He says, maybe we will never know, you know? Certain things, I guess. Just I was gonna say, just like the building of the pyramids, and I say maybe because of my past life I know a little bit, but I don't really know. I'm just a piece of dust, but I know my geopolitics and I love my rock and roll, and I got my dream, the dancing goddess in the dragon kingdom, which is for the empire of the 63 and the 21st century, and pledge allegiance. And now we're going to discuss the DMAA, super important again. Pay strong attention to the DMAA. What is the DMAA? It stands for Direct Military Assistance or Action. DMAA, A or AA, you can invert them, assistance or action, and in the parentheses it has a fifth letter, the C, consequence. So the DMAA, the Direct Military Assistance or Action, has in potential the consequence. So DMAA, the Direct Military Assistance or Action, has in consequence a C, the C, right? The C. Direct Military Assistance or Action has the C as in the consequence. So again, thank you to my anonymous friend whom I had discussed at large how this, I have to explain it, and how to be, not because sometimes aspects were misunderstood as not being compassionate or empathetic. We are, but we are more by action, you know, rather than verbal consolation. And that's another thing we have to clarify as aspects and neurotypicals. That yes, aspects we are. I am myself compassionate, generous, and charitable, and just compassion and empathy is more by action rather than just consolation or verbal consolation. So of course, what I was going to say now is, of course, that the dynamics, of course, where we are now, to be circumstantial about, is something which we have, of course, now in all the dynamics where we are appellated to be. So, of course, the DMAA has nothing to do with humanitarian aid or assistance, such as providing food, shelter, sanitation pads, hygienic pads, food or baby powder, or anything that is nutritious or food and humanitarian in nature. It's strictly military. That's where it has to be comprehended fully, the intellectual discussion of this theory that has to be, of course, supremely understood fully. So the DMAA, the Direct Military Assistance and Action, you know, it's something which, of course, has to be fully comprehended integrally in the aspects. So this aspect, right, that it has to be understood fully, is because it is valuable. It's not just a theory, it is a work tool, a protocol which we have to, from now on for the future of NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization member countries, which is a military defense alliance. It's specifically made for NATO. As the motto of NATO is, of course, animus in consuelo liber. That's Latin for a mind unfettered in deliberation, a mind unfettered in deliberation, a mind unfettered in deliberation. Animus in consuelo liber, that's Latin for a mind unfettered in deliberation, and thus my DMAA has to be part of the protocols of deliberation and a work tool from now on as a frame of reference and actually a decision-making tool. A decision-making tool. It's all that. It's a theory, it's a protocol, it's a decision-making tool. The DMAA, in consequence, has the C, the potential C, which is potential the consequence of not, right, adhering and not putting it into practice yet. So that is the DMAA, which I'm going to discuss now. And the DMAA has the potential C, that is the potential C for consequence of the potential consequence of it, the potential consequence, which it can, of course, be X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D, one, such as, for example, foreign powers, governments conducting espionage, hacking, malicious, and financing internal discord, even assassinations, as I was evaluating and meditating on the Charlie Kirk assassination. I'm not too familiar. Charlie Kirk, I'm going to have to listen more to his dictums. Of course, it's somebody being assassinated is a tragedy, unless the only motive for lethal force is to save somebody else. So, for example, in individual citizens goes, as I saw one lethal action taken by our security forces, and somebody was going with a machete, was about to chop and hit with a big kitchen, I think machete or kitchen knife, somebody on the street, and then the intervention of the police officer said, stop, drop your weapon, and had to open lethal fire. So that was a last resort. But assassination is something totally different. But I always meditate if it's not, foreign powers taking advantage of our own cultural wars and everything that's going on internecine, internally in our domestic affair. Or it could be financing of transnational criminal syndicate organized groups, right, and production of fentanyl, because I think more and more fentanyl, I'm declaring it as a bioweapon, because it doesn't make sense to me that people are dying and dying and overdosing so much of fentanyl, since drug trade, a drug dealer would like to make money to buy those 44 cars and 4 mansions and, right, to make it for the profit motive. And since they're dying so many of the fentanyl, more and more I think that the tempering, changing the structure of this fentanyl, it's now more a bioweapon than a drug. More and more I'm declaring fentanyl as a bioweapon, a covert biological weapon rather than a drug in the traditional sense like cocaine. And here we legalized, in 2019 we legalized cannabis. As a matter of fact, I still have from about 3.5 years ago leftover cannabis which I bought so long ago. I haven't even smoked it all. I don't really smoke. Last time I took a puff of cigarettes was 2017 when I was in Vancouver. And that was only a few puffs, and I don't think I even inhaled it. But cigarettes I don't smoke. I don't know if prior to February 2014 if I was smoking, doing drugs, doing hard drugs, doing all of that, alcoholic. Maybe I was a junkie alcoholic for a few years. That's why I don't remember my life prior to February, like February, about before February 2014 February 2014 is like a blackout in my... Anyways, I'm going to go back to the DMAA, because most of my work, my protocols, my independent work has been done in the past years, and spent a few years depressed, and I guess with one foot in the streets, one foot in the libraries, one foot in the streets, one foot in the libraries. one foot in the streets, one foot in the libraries. I guess if I go retrieve what I got from like 2014, summer 2014 to summer 2019, all the books in those 5 years, you can bet that 90+% were related to geopolitics in a way. And most of my theories, protocols, initiatives are created post me coming out of my depression. Some predated, such as my work with CSIS and other national security matters, but of course they predate that. They predate a bit, 2017, but most of my work is after I got out of the depression. And ideas also came during crossing Canada, such as the Total Mobile Defense Theory, TMDT, which when it has an S, the fifth acronym, just like the DMA has a fifth one, is when we implement the Total Mobile Defense Theory, but I cannot discuss it over very much. It's made for the NORAD complex, for Canada, United States joint, calling for Operation Northern Scorpio to integrate the FBI and the RCMP to create the Imperial Police Integrated Police Service Security Service, the Integrated Police Security Service, Imperial Integrated Police Service, or the Imperial Integrated Police Service, via also the CIT. But these I cannot discuss over much because they're national by national security matters, right? The Total Mobile Defense Theory, it's national security sensitive, so I can only discuss it with RCMP chiefs David McGinty and Pam Bondi and Pete Hexet and Tulsi Gabbard, and I would have voted for Kamala Biden, but a pro-labor and love universal revolutionary centrist, the Democratic Republican Democrat, 50-50, and that's for the new third party of the NACWP, which we're going to found, the North American Collective Workers Party, as a PPP foundational element. And of course that is something which we have to componently discuss now. The DMAA, so the direct military assistance on action, has a consequence. So it's only assistance or action. For example, and I'll give you concrete examples. It's again only when NATO member countries decides to take action or to assist, again in just a military manner, just military, by providing weaponry, munitions, but it could also be training, munitions, and of course explosives and tanks or whatever have you. So that is just of course the fundamental aspect where we have now to be. So of course all that fundamental aspect where we have now to be is of course the creation of this complex for the DMAA. So of course the DMAA, direct military assistance and action, is of course the consequential manner where we have now to be integrally in our aspects of our daily lives and daily routines. So the DMAA, direct military assistance and action, is of course the consequences of us. NATO taking assistance or action is of course can be because and can be due of course that the consequence can be that covert police services from those nations affected can of course take action here internally by financing, for example, transnational criminal organized syndicate groups to mass produce fentanyl. So ABCD, 1, 2, 3, XYZ, ABCD. It could be a confluence of those or several, right? So I'll give you an example of a DMAA. Canada, for example, and NATO member countries and Canada providing assistance to Ukraine. It's an example of the DMAA, direct military assistance. And now whether we take in the future, because it's a frame of reference, it's a protocol, it's a theory, it's of course a decision-making tool because of the potential consequences, right? Whether to take direct military assistance and action in conflicts that are non-NATO conflicts. Countries which are at conflict or warring against each other or at war, fighting, that are not part of NATO, such as Russia, Ukraine. NATO, Ukraine was not part of Russia, part of NATO. Ukraine was not part of NATO. Israel neither. Taiwan neither. India neither, right? So whether we take assistance or action in the future, because we have to think of potential consequences thereof, right? So now we have Ukraine, which Canada, we provided helmets, we provided armored vehicles, munition, drones, and other weaponry, right? So that is assistance. We did not get, no NATO member country has taken action. Action is, for example, in Yugoslavia, the bombing of Belgrade. Libya, Syria, intervention in Afghanistan. That's direct action. Assistance is, for example, providing munition arms to Ukraine, weaponry, armed vehicles, or to Taiwan, for example. Taiwan, right? Taiwan, the ROC, Republic of China, the island, which with China, they have not resolved their conflicts yet. And China always states that it is to be reunited, the reunification of China, because they consider it a rogue. And their conflict dates from Mao Zedong's era, Mao Zedong in 1949, when he established the People's Republic of China, in, of course, 1949. And of course, that's a conflict which was not fully resolved. They did not fully resolve their conflict, which dates from back then, 1949. That is an old, yes, it's still decades and decades it's unresolved. So they were fighting civil war, and the nationalists, the Kuomintang, fled to Taiwan, right? And they declared their new state, nationalist Republican state there, right? And the Kuomintang ruled for decades. Of course, Taiwan, the island, is a military junta. They had for decades martial law in Taiwan. They ruled from like the 40s to the 80s. I think 40 years or 44 years, around that. 40 or 44 years. They ruled decades and decades. They had officially martial law until the 90s. Taiwan didn't have elections, democratic elections, right? And they boomed in the 60s and 70s. Their electronics and their export, they boomed as still under a military junta, kind of a military junta, a martial law. They were under martial law, and one party state dominated, which was the Kuomintang, which was the nationalist party from mainland China, which had fled to the island of Formosa, Taiwan. So that's the conflict which is not fully resolved. But, of course, that's the action, DMAA, direct military action or assistance, which, of course, NATO member countries had taken, right, vis-a-vis this. And there's the potential C, the consequences. And the consequences can be, of course, plenty of consequences, of course, such as sabotage, fomenting internal riots, right, economic warfare, riots, fomenting riots, assassinations can also be powerful alliances. So one of the consequences of us assisting Ukraine and Taiwan is a diplomatic military one, is Russia and China solidifying their union. Hey, salut.
Ça va bien?
Richard?
Robert?
Ah, Richard, Robert, hey, ça va bien vous-même?
Oui,
Je vous ai pas reconnu, j'étais dans ma bulle un peu.
J'ai pris ma retraite, c'est pour ça qu'on
ouais?
se voit plus.
J'étais dans ma bulle, excuse-moi.
Désolé.
Richard, ça va bien? Un gros câlin?
Ah oui, voilà.
Eh ben oui. Hey, Richard, c'est ça. Ça va bien, vous?
Très bien.
Ah, ok.
Ma soeur Louise.
Louise?
Je me rappelle pas de ton prénom.
Adrien.
Mais ton nickname, c'était
Dragon.
Adrien. Comment?
Dragon arc-en-ciel.
C'est ça, Dragon arc-en-ciel.
Ah ouais, parce que je chante du rock'n'roll, puis là, j'étais totalement dans ma bulle de la géopolitique, là. Puis là, je savais pas c'était qui me disait bonsoir, là. Fait que... Vous allez à la montagne en haut?
Yes.
OK. Tant mieux. Fait que là, je vous verrai plus jamais dans le coin, là?
Oui, dans le coin, mais je suis plus sur ma traverse.
OK. Fait que c'est quand qu'on fait le petit film qu'on avait parlé, là, pour notre communauté, là?
Je pense pas qu'on avait parlé d'un film.
Ah ouais, OK. Tu sais, à la messe arc-en-ciel, là, t'en souviens pas?
Non.
En latin?
Non.
On avait dit qu'on allait faire, tu sais, parce que moi je suis bisexuel, tu sais, pansexuel, puis lui est gay, tu sais. J'avais dit qu'on fasse une scène, tu sais, pour la communauté LGBTQ.
Je me rappelle pas.
Tu t'en souviens pas? Eh bien, puis qu'on chantait en latin, tu t'en souviens pas, mais c'était tout à la thématique des scènes LGBTQ, là. Tu t'en souviens pas?
Non, pas du tout.
Fait un an.
C'était avec moi.
Ah oui, c'était avec toi. On allait chanter le pénissus, moi j'aime sus, le pénissus, tu t'en souviens pas? Non, tu t'en souviens pas, mais là, voyons, là. Salut! Salut, bye! Anyways, that was a little bit of a humor with that, you know. That was a little bit of gay humor, you know, because it's part of the LGBTQ community. And that's about it with that, and that's something which we gotta do, and that's my Robert, you know. That's Robert there, you know, and that is somebody a friend made here at the corner, you know. I made it a corner there, and you know, and that is just something which we do, you know. And that I was back to geopolitics, I'm real French Canadian, you know, and that's why we love our French language here. I did a little bit of humor with that, and as I said, we're both part of the LGBTQ community, and we're gonna sing, of course, a little bit of I forgot. Yeah, I forgot that I composed a LGBTQ theme, LGBTQ theme, LGBTQ theme, LGBTQ theme. LGBTQ team, team LGBTQ team, a little scene for a movie, and that's what it is with that, and that's how we got. So back to the DMAA, direct military assistance or action, direct military assistance or action, direct military assistance or action. You know, DMAA. The direct military assistance or action, as it relates to the possibility of the conflict which we have potentially on the horizon, to be potentially on the horizon, potentially on the horizon, potentially on the horizon. And that's why we are, you know, and potentially on the horizon because of the escalation, possibility of escalation. So the DMAA is a structure, but it's more than a structure, right? So the structure is that it has to be put as a protocol, you know, the protocol which has to be, of course, incorporated for decision-making processes. So the DMAA, of course, direct military assistance, right, has to be incorporated in the plurality of future action or inaction or assistance. So whether we take assistance or action, that is something which of course we have to evaluate in the future. So basically we have to say that today it is of course the amalgamation of all the plurality of course of all the action which we have taken in the past or we take present, right? Because it doesn't go in the future. Future is only speculative from now this point in time. I don't want to be too intellectual, academic about it, but there's definitely ramifications of an intellectual, academic, more sophisticated, philosophical. I want to be as forthcoming as I can be and to be as simple as I can be but it's also more complex. The theory, of course, is not just a theory. Again, it's a work of reference. So it's not just a theory, it's of course a work of reference where we have the satisfactory, of course, appellation, what we got, you know, this where we have, of course, all, of course, the situational aspect what we got now, and of course, it was something what we have, of course, to do. So, of course, all the plurality, of course, where we are now is, of course, the ramifications, of course, of the plurality where we are now to be incorporated in all the domains and all, of course, the incorporation of this DMA, direct military assistance or action, where we have, of course, now to be involved in this situational awareness and, of course, the aspects of where we are now circummitted. So, of course, all the situational aspects where we are now, which, of course, where we have to be, of course, categorically involved is all the domain of appellations where we are now to be, of course, involved, where we are to be the dictation, of course, of this situational complexities, that this can be an evolving framework of reference. From now, this point in time, it is, of course, September 19th. But, of course, tomorrow there could be an added conflict, which, of course, can cause several conflagrations, which are not to be taken into consideration as of yet. Right. So back to the action which we took for Ukraine, for example, vis-a-vis Ukraine. So that action which we took vis-a-vis Ukraine is a potential point, whereas it has caused that Russia and China, as I was discussing before, has as a consequence, the C, remember, the DMAA, direct military assistance or action, has a C, the consequence. Has a C, the consequence. So the C is the consequence, right? So direct military assistance or action has the C, the consequence. And one of these potential consequences is, well, it's actually the consequence for us, for NATO member countries, assisting Taiwan and assisting Ukraine is the solidification of the Russia-China, which have solidified their military, political, economic, financial, diplomatic ties, strengthened and strengthened and strengthened and strengthened. They kept going to visit each other more and more and more and more, right? So that is the consequence. That is the direct consequence of this action. But it's not a correction. It's not an action. But this action is they had taken the action, that is to solidify their. But we had taken assistance, and we haven't stricken Russia or China directly, right? We had taken assistance, right? So we have assisted countries with their defensive capabilities. But this assistance is also taken into consideration, even sometimes very much just like it would be action, but of course a bit less. If it's action, it could be outright war, right? Because if we go to war with Russia, and there has been some incursions last week in NATO territory, of which Romania, an incursion in Romania, and now an incursion in Poland, and now in the Baltic countries. So in the past 11 days, there has been three different incursions by Russia into the airspace of these countries, which are part of NATO, which of course before were part of the Warsaw Pact, part of what was called the Soviet bloc. So that's the geopolitical perspective, where we have to take history into account. And in order to understand Russia more, you have to also get acquainted with a more, I would say, not well known, more shady, or if you mean a more shadowy figure, called Alexander Dugin. Alexander Dugin. D-U-G. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but Dugin, D-U-G-I-N. That's the surname. And he's a geopolitical strategist, philosopher, intellectual in Russia. And he wrote in the 90s the fourth geopolitical theory and other geopolitical treaties, which are quite alarming, that Russia should foment internal, really outright plan, pretty hardcore, to incite, for example, racial tensions in the West, in Canada, United States. It's outright there. It's right there written that you should take advantage geopolitically of our diversity. Just our brothers and sisters, blacks. We're 13.3, 13.4%. Our brothers and sisters in the North American Collective, my neighbors included, are blacks. So, and interestingly enough, when I was watching the parade, I gotta watch it again, a China parade, military parade, I saw tens of thousands of men and women, but I didn't see any black men or black women there, And if you want to make LOV with me, or I am androgynous pansexual, you gotta be of age though, 18 plus, friends with benefits only, don't waste my time, I won't waste you. If you're black, you're white or black, friends with benefits, We can double trouble that rainbow dragon rock and roll, We can double trouble that rainbow dragon rock and roll. So if you're black, you're white, we can of course rainbow dragon that rock and roll 24/7, of course, but not 24/7, but on occasion, So, but yeah, I didn't even see one black or one person of color in the. I'm still gonna have to check, because tens of thousands of men and women in uniform now want to be black men or black women or men of color in my army, the Dragonaut, which you're going to found, of course, from existing armies of the North American Collective and integrated, mobilizing more population in the total SSD, security, service, and defense via my CIT and DRT. Of course, my brothers and sisters, blacks and men and women of color, are more than welcome, and my fellow neurodivergents, and of course, people who are other gender, queer, and trans, and we gotta get that centrism. I understand there's labor. My brothers and sisters, billionaires. We gotta have some financing of people to do some activities, the re-establishment of our cities, and I believe I bring to the table something for the 21st century that's great. The kisses and the theories and the protocols, and of course the affirmations where we are now. As I cross the street, thank you for letting me a dominion, and we're gonna finalize one more word on the DMAA, and then we're gonna switch to the DRT. I just want to pass to see these beauties. Hey, get the Halloween ready. Get the Halloween. Getting ready for the Halloween with some pumpkins. I love it, gotta see it. So the DMAA has potential consequences, and one of the consequences, which is a consequence outright, beautiful yellow. Love those yellows. is the solidification and of the Russia-China alliance, and furthermore it could even be BRICS. But one of the fundamental pillars is the geopolitical strategy of Russia and China, solidifying their military alliance, their military political financial alliance, military political commercial alliance, their military political commercial alliance, their military political commercial alliance. Furthermore, right? So their military political alliance has been solidified evermore. Beautiful yellow flowers there in the corner. So that is the confluential element of the positions, right? The positions. So it is the evaluation, furthermore, where we have to interact and have to take it a step further in all the dynamics. All the dynamics that we are, of course, to get it now for all these fundamentals that are for our security, for our common well-being, and whether to take action or assist in the future. The DMAA with its C potential in parenthesis consequence, C for consequence, D direct, D for direct, M for military, A for assistance, A for action, DMAA, or action or assistance. They can be interchanged, right? The AAs, it's either one or the other, or it could be even both. It's cases of even both. NATO countries, and NATO has only invoked Article 11 once, and I predicted this international conflagration that's happening now, World War III back in 2019. I have proof on the table. I also put that DMAA that I just discussed now. And what I got to say now next is that I did not predict, however, that what's happening now between Canada and the United States, I did not predict the re-election of Donald Trump. So that I have to say clearly that is new for me. I did not predict that there's going to be, that the relations, the Canadian United States relations will deteriorate. That I did not predict. That's also new for me. So I did not predict that there's going to be a deterioration of relations with the United States. Right? I did not predict that. That I did not predict. I predicted that there was going to be an international conflagration in World War III, but I did not predict the re-election of Donald Trump, and that we are going to reach such a low point, and that the trade war between Canada and the United States will even escalate, right? Because since 2018, I've been challenging Donald Trump to a boxing match on the Canadian-U.S. border, and I will to build the Forgotten Goddess GODDSS temple, and on the Canadian-U.S. border to build the biggest ever sports complex arena, to be 11 times bigger than the Caesars Superdome, which changed names. It's in Louisiana, New Orleans. Changed names several times, just like I changed names. Before it used to be known as the Mercedes-Benz Arena Dome. Now it's Mercedes-Benz changed name to Caesars Superdome. And before that, even before changed names it was known as the Louisiana Arena, Louisiana Superdome, because it's in New Orleans. And several Super Bowls were fought, played, battled out there. One of my favorites is the Super Bowl 47. Is one of my top 5, where paradoxically my 49ers lost by 3 points only, still a loss. One of my favorite Super Bowls is Super Bowl 47. It has several nicknames. One of the nicknames is Hardball Ball, Blackout Ball, Bro Ball. It has several nicknames. So we're going to build that super coliseum on the Canadian-U.S. border, which is going to be 11 times bigger than that arena. 11 times bigger, and where me and Donald Trump, we're going to inaugurate it in a boxing match. Me and Donald Trump, we're going to inaugurate it in a boxing match. Because I have been and will continue to challenge Donald Trump to a boxing match ever since 2018. And in the backpack, I got those red gloves in the backpack. I got those red gloves in the backpack. My anonymous friend who had donated to me those red gloves back in 2018, and I put them to some good use. I'm going to put them to some good use in the coming days, weeks, and months ahead. And I put them to some good use. Auctioning them for $1 million. Going to give half to my anonymous friend, and me and Donald Trump, we're going to inaugurate. We're going to build that Imperial People's Coliseum to be 11 times bigger than the Hardball Ball. Where actually the Hardball Ball was, of course, the name of the Super Bowl nicknamed Super Bowl 47, and of course that is of course the name where he has several nicknames, and of course Super Bowl 47, my 49ers lost, but not by much, by 3 points, still a loss, but it's one of my top 5 Super Bowls. The first 3 ones were my 49ers win. Please, NFL, NHL, NBA, MLB, give a little bit of injection for women's sports. I'm a bit upset that not even one woman of last year's Forbes list of the richest, most paid, the most paid athletes of 2024 ended the year in December 2024 last year. They were all men. All 50, first 50, they were all men. Not even one out of the top 50 was a woman. Most paid athletes of 2024. Can you imagine? They were all men. And the PVHL rock and roll, if I could afford, I would go to all the matches, local matches of the professional women's hockey league, where the Victoire rock and roll with that. So reduce the cost, give some tickets. NFL, NHL, MLB, NBA, MLB, NHL, and NFL, National Football League, National Hockey League, National Basketball Association, Major League Baseball. Please give some tickets to the public workers. Tough economic times, and now that I'm discussing tough economic times, I'm going to discuss the DRT. Super important that I discuss the DRT, the debt refusion theory, now that I'm on the subject. So get ready, let's rock and roll. The debt refusion theory, the DRT, is the solution for where we are now for both Canada and United States. And again, I gotta say before I go into the DRT that our main foreign affairs point or principle or if we are to place a hierarchical interests on the number one position for Canada and reciprocity for the United States vis-a-vis Canada, and for the Canada vis-a-vis the United States when it comes to foreign affairs, our number one priority has to be, if we are to establish a hierarchy, that we are to work to establish, whether on the left, on the right, and the center, to have the best, most cordial economic, social, financial, military, diplomatic, social, cultural, defense, security, commercial relations with the United States, and the United States to have relations vis-a-vis us. That is just the constant. Just like that pie symbol, not the edible pie, like a cherry pie, fruit pie, apple pie, blackberry pie, blueberry pie, XYZ pie is edible, but the pie, the symbol, the mathematical constant which relates to the circumference of a circle, right? It's always 3.1415. It's a number. It's the letter N. N for Normandy, neutral, neurodivergent, natural, or neurotypical. The letter N has 2 heads, 2 faces, and one head kind of looks like a hawk, H-A-W-K, my totem birds, and the other head kind of looks like a donkey, like a dog, like a aardvark, like a canine, also like a hyena type, more an earthy type of head, and like 2 heads, 2 faces. That's why our coming democratic imperial republic of the 63 will have 2 heads, 2 faces. One benevolent for goodness and kindness. One benevolent for goodness and kindness. The other one, I guess, for punish, and for to a bit of that justice, punishment, I guess. So we'll have 2 heads, 2 faces, and we're gonna have that dual Pentagon, and we're going to transform Hawkeye into the SSD complex, security, service, and defense, total integration with the citizenry. So now it's alarming because since August 1st of this year, we are designated Canada, and this is serious, and so we're designated as an unusual and extraordinary threat by the United States. We're designated as an unusual and extraordinary threat by the United States. We're designated as an unusual, an extraordinary threat by the United States. We're designated as an unusual, an extraordinary threat by the USA. Because, of course, it's mentioned there in black and white by the Trump administration and the White House dictums of the motives of the increase of tariffs on Canada, that it is the lack of coordination. And when you cooperate, you don't necessarily coordinate, right? Because you coordinate is more action-based. While you cooperate, you can cooperate on information exchange, information sharing, but not necessarily coordinate. And of course, it's stated there that our law enforcement lack coordination with the United States. Coordination. And of course, the amount of fentanyl supposedly tripled since 2024. And of course, that amount of fentanyl which crossed from Canada to the United States could have potentially killed 16 million Americans. So we're now, look at that, isn't that beautiful garden here? We're now designated as an unusual and extraordinary threat to the American people. Unusual and extraordinary, it gives me goosebumps. That's how we are designated by the current administration. It's alarming, eh? It's dangerous, and it's unprecedented. So we have to take it seriously. And of course the last year, and I know it's also mentioned there in black and white, what that motive is the growing super labs in Canada, drug super labs. And although I'm no Trump supporter, we've been warned by the RCMP for years and years and years and years, since at least 2015, especially since February 2020, since 2020, 2021, during COVID, but since 2015, that there's a growing transnational criminal syndicate, organized groups establishing themselves in Canada. And last year, October 25th, 2024, is going to be a year next month, the RCMP dismantled the biggest ever drug super lab in the history of Canada. The biggest ever drug super lab in the history of Canada in BC, Surrey, BC. Supposedly about 90 million doses of fentanyl could have potentially, of course it's documented, and that's the amount of doses in the millions. It could have, of course, killed the population of Canada twice over. It could have potentially killed 88 million. Just that one super lab, that's so potent. Just one super lab could have killed all the fentanyl that was made there, could have killed the population of Canada twice over. Can you imagine? Is this not a crisis emergency, a bioweapon? Not a drug? Is this not a bioweapon, this fentanyl? Not a drug anymore? What's going on here? You know what I mean? It seems more like it's a bioweapon. If just that one super lab and supported techniques are cartel-based, and this was a transnational criminal syndicate organized groups, or multiple criminal organizations, transnational criminal organizations, which of course they have put themselves to work together, They have put themselves to work together. Right? So this growing transnational criminal syndicate organized groups have put themselves to work together. So that is, of course, just the element of it. The fact is that the RCMP dismantled last year and seized weaponry, weapons, money, and that fentanyl doses. What if this transnational criminal syndicate organized group had 5 labs, That means that they took one out, there's four to go, there's 4 to go, there's 4 to go, there's 4 to go, if the one was taken out, right? If they had 5, right? If there was 5, right? If there were 5, that means that one was that means that 1 out of 5, that means that there's 4 left. So that's a possibility. So now we're going to discuss the DRT, because we got to implement the DRT, Canada, United States, because it's part, of course, of the binational. It's part, of course, of the binational geopolitical strategy for the North American Collective. It's part of the binational North American Collective, of course. It's part of my binational geopolitical strategy for total BDD, benevolence, dominance, and dominion. But the bipolar, it's also officially called the bipolar geopolitical strategy for total BDD, benevolence, dominance, and dominion of the world, by fusing Canada and the United States into the Imperial Republican Democratic Complex and the creation of the 2 complementary covenant and cooperative institutions thereof. But bipolar, not to be confused with the psychological condition. It has nothing to do with that. It just reflects Canada and the United States as a integral complex, and the forces and the strengths complementary to each other. So we're now gonna discuss the DRT, debt refusion theory. So Canada and the United States, we have to implement my DRT theory fundamentally at the same time, simultaneously, binationally. Just like, for example, the National Hockey League is not really national, it's binational. We have both majority of the people, citizens in Canada and the United States. We have 4 main economic problems. One is the growing cost of living. The rents are increasing. Even my rent went up between, I'm going to not say the number exactly, but between $6 and $10. So you can vary it in between, but I find it fair. I'm not going to complain. The stagnation of the salaries and the growing credit card debt. Even now, somebody swiping the credit card debt get even more in debt, while the salary stagnates and the prices keep going up. for many goods. Coffee, my wafers, chocolate, lettuce, bread and butter, it's going up. Prices are still going up. Even fast food, it's hardcore. While the stagnation of the salary stagnates. So that's where the problem lies, because the salaries are stagnated, and the prices kept going up. So the majority of the consumer citizens of the United States and Canada have suffered. So the DRT is the solution. You can argue on the one. So in my DRT, the debt refusion theory is the solution, or if not, something which is very similar in fundamental principles to my DRT, which includes the monetary integration theory, right? So the DRT, it includes the monetary integration theory, which is the financial theory which was implemented in the European Union, right? 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 So of course implementation, what is that it is now, of course, fundamentally in the aspects where we are now to be implementing my DRT theory, which I'm going to explain. So again, it includes, integrated in my DRT theory, is integrated the MIT monetary integration theory, which is the financial theory which was integrated in the European Union. Germany, Italy, France, Belgium, many countries destroyed their national central banks. They destroyed their national central banks, and they created the ECB, which is a multinational central bank. They don't have old national currencies, and they don't have national central banks anymore since the 90s, like we do. Bank of Canada, Federal Reserve, Bank of Israel, Banco de Mexico. Other countries have national central banks. They don't have it anymore for decades now, since the 90s. So that theory which they implemented in the European Union is integrated in mine. So we're going to implement it here in North America, Canada, United States, and it can be expanded to Mexico, NATO complex, blah, 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 blah. But first and foremost, Canada, United States. So we're going to take all the, here it is explained. And we have no choice. We're on the verge of a public financial collapse. There's cuts in the public like it never has been, and loss of jobs, and we have to implement it. We have to. It's an emergency. We have to do it ASAP. So we're going to take all the public and the private. We're going to take all the public and the private debt, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. We're going to take all the public and the private debt. My $10,000 debt, your $10,000 debt, my 10,000, all of the debt, public and private debt. Of course, we're going to create it together. We're going to take all the public and the private debt, add it all together, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, all the Canadian public private debt. We're going to add it all together, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, all the public and the private debt. We're going to add it together. We're going to convert it into US dollars, and we're going to add it with the public private debt of the US, right? And that money is going to be, and all the other money in circulation is going to be the initial money supply for this new central bank, which we're going to create the Imperial Central Bank to issue either the Imperial dollar, or preferably what I call the UE, because that's what the dollar is. The dollar, the euro, the yen, the yuan, the shekel, that's basically what money is. It's an exchange unit, fundamentally in principle. So we're going to create the UE. U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot UE. The UE is going to have the value of the US dollar. We're going to set an interest rate level of 10%, right? So we're going to create the UE. U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot UE. The universal exchange unit, the UE. The universal exchange unit is going to have the value of the US dollar. The UE, U dot universal, U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot UE. U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot UE. The UE, the universal exchange unit, U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot UE. The universal exchange is going to have the value of the US dollar. We're going to set an interest rate level of 10%. It's not going to be able to be more than 10% after that. With that money, we're going to rebuild the infrastructure, get rid of the border, fuse the RCMP and the FBI into the Imperial Police Security Services of the 63. We're going to mass finance healthcare, mass finance citizens' fitness. We're going to get rid of the border, do a great census, see who's been living here since at least, I guess, could be 2014, 11 years, 7 years, 5 years, 4 years, to see if we can give some amnesty, I guess, if you've been convicted of 44 criminal convictions in the past 11 years or whatever, less than 11 years or 11 years, then 44 convictions, I guess, will be, rather than imperial criminal amnesty, will be Imperial Dracula policy. But I guess we're going to work on the Imperial Criminal Rehabilitation Act in order for us to construct those 44 tunnels We gotta start building 44 majestic mass underground city structures, tunnels underneath subterranean cities. 44 mass subterranean cities. In case of a thermonuclear war, we gotta start building mass underground 44 tunnels in case of a thermonuclear war. A mass public-private partnership via the DRT. We're gonna build more satellites, integrate all citizens and security. We're gonna, of course, get coast-to-coast, ocean-to-ocean, rebuild the infrastructure, rebuild the bridges, the railways, the infrastructure across the 63. We're gonna mass finance citizens' fitness, mass finance the rehabilitation of the criminal population, mass finance social housing and structure, give, of course, the Rehabilitation Act of the Empire for the citizens and the wellness and the well-being. We're gonna also mass finance tourism. We're gonna have every season, we're gonna have every season. That is spring, summer, autumn, winter, the changing of the equinox and the solstice. One citizen of the empire who's 16 of age, 16 plus, standard federal Imperial Republic standard across the 63 new states is gonna be credited 4 days. The 4 days is gonna be credited 4 days. 4 times a year for every season. That's 4 times 4, 16 total days a year. Where food, lodging, and transport. When you cross midnight, past midnight, it's a night, so it's basically 4 nights. So depending on what transport you take, the train, the plane, or the car, or the bus, if you pass the night, then you lose the night if you're in travel. So you better start early and then reach the state, or you cross and you get, because you can go anywhere from one state to the other state. So from Yukon to Florida, from Florida to California, from British Columbia to Quebec, Nova Scotia, all the 63 for the Imperial Tourism program for the rehabilitation and rejuvenation. This is going to cause a great joy and rejuvenation, and establishing a strong esprit de corps. We're going to establish a strong esprit de corps that way, right? We're going to be establishing a strong esprit de corps. Go public workers, go see mass buildings of the empires, highways, the bridges with the DRT and this Imperial for the Imperial Tourism Ministry. We're going to create 4 ministries for security, service, insurance of freedom, insurance of liberty, and rejuvenation. And this financing of tourism, you don't have to take 4 days every season, spring, winter, autumn, summer, spring, winter, autumn. You can take 16 days at the end of the year, right, for the availability. So food, housing, and transport. So fast food, going to be credited some UEs to eat, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Of course, you don't expect caviar and 3 bottles of champagne there. It's going to be what's available, fast food, restaurants, everything that we have, for example, is fast food. I wouldn't mind. I would just burger those up. Breakfast, good breakfast, eggs and bacon. That does it for me. And lunch, have a little bit of that poutine or whatever it is available, or hamburgers, 2 hamburgers with some fries, and then in the evening, chop me up some more hamburgers, man, or whatever's, whatever's, let's say, credited for today's cost of, let's say, $25-$40 value of US dollars today in the fast food, fast food restaurant, whatever, credit like something like $40 for $40 or 50. And today's going to be the UEs, but this new currency, Imperial dollar. But yeah, this is going to be great. And you can take 16 days, and you have to use them within, of course, 4 days or whatever have you. You have to use them within 4 years. Because you can't accumulate like 60 days and then take all the 60. But so after a cycle of next 3.5 years, 7 years, septennium, you use them or lose them, kind of. So what's recommended is you take either 4 days. You can go to neighboring state. Neighboring state. I'm going to neighboring state, or you can go different states, anywhere across the 63. From any state that you are, you're gonna be accorded those privileges, rights from the empire, right? For tourism, for rejuvenation, and people are gonna celebrate that, and we're gonna have events, celebrating that. And if you're gonna be who are 16 and plus is gonna be credited. So you can take the 16, or you can take 8 days. me, that's what I will do, of course. Myself, of course, is gonna be the same principle. I'm gonna get 4 days also, and this is gonna be work, just like the Empire. And this gonna take 8 days, and then 16 days. 8 days, 16 days, preferably 18 days, and with consent, people can do that good loving if you're single, and have different good loving also. Good loving. So yeah, dancing and feasting, and take it during the weekend. Spend the weekend in another state. Had food, lodging, and you can go visit. Have the trains, the metro paid, and visit cities, small cities. If it's fun, visit any state, any place where you will. You're gonna have those days. You can take, or you can just travel in the 4 days and go back to your state, and that's it. You can also just to spend the night traveling, right? Take those 4 nights traveling, and you get your meal, and you spend just 4 nights, and then that's it. You have that system in place. It requires a mass public-private partnership, tech corporations, applications. We're going to build new phones, the Imperial phones, smartphones for all the citizens, and there's going to be new network of the 4G, 3G, 5G new networks, so that we don't get espionage from foreign powers. Going to be a mass public-private partnership, as Microsoft, my brother Bill Gates and Microsoft has proven that have been breached by China and other foreign actors, so we're gonna have to do on the tech side as well. And yeah, with Peter Thiel and all my tech brothers, and support, pledge your allegiance to our family. That's the dream. That's just the spark of it, and that's the ideas and the protocols which we gotta work together on. So now we're gonna spit it on some French a little bit, because je viens de la belle province. Pledge your allegiance to our family. Bienvenue, Québécois, Québécoises. Je viens de voir tantôt une connaissance amie quand je me suis fait ces années qui passent, mais c'est Robert, c'est pas Richard, j'avais R, mais je dis Robert, Richard, mais ça n'en venait pas, mais j'étais tellement dans ma bulle de la géopolitique, puis c'est ça que bien sûr je fais moi-même, la géopolitique, le rock'n'roll, l'entraînement physique, puis je fais bien sûr ces choses-là constamment, bien sûr, c'est des choses que je fais moi-même dans cette constance de vivre ici sur l'île de Montréal avec mon Asperger's, l'autisme, mon manque fonctionnel. Des fois, c'est plus difficile les conversations sociales. Puis bien sûr que je vis avec ces cicatrices, puis avec ce spectre que moi-même, j'ai souffert quand même assez, beaucoup. Vous savez, la perte d'emploi, pas être capable de garder l'emploi à long terme, ces choses-là, la perte d'amis, puis tous ces problèmes qui viennent avec l'Asperger's, l'autisme non fonctionnel, à cause que notre cerveau est différent un peu, fait que la manière qu'on communique, ça peut être étrange un peu de cette manière, mais je suis quand même un artiste, athlète, androgyne, pansexuel, je voulais faire l'amour, vous avez 18 ans et plus, je vous carte comme que vous allez bien sûr manger, mais quand vous allez bien sûr acheter de l'alcool ou du cannabis, bien sûr quand vous allez bien sûr soit acheter du cannabis, bien sûr faire bien sûr dans ce point d'avoir bien sûr dans cette consommation de cannabis et d'autres choses, bien sûr, c'est quelque chose qui va faire que je vous donne les cartes si vous êtes noir et blanc, hommes et femmes, blanc et noir. Si vous soyez, bien sûr, si vous voulez me faire de l'amour, mais ça va faire que je vous carte, bien sûr, dans ce point de domaine, donc que je vis maintenant, dans ce point de contingence. Bon, c'est sûr que aujourd'hui, en vous encourageant à faire de l'entraînement physique, c'est vendredi, le sabbat s'en vient, puis je vais faire un petit rock'n'roll d'amour, de la géopolitique, bien sûr que c'est ça que je suis bon, c'est ça que je vais en parler, vis-à-vis de l'autisme, mon manque fonctionnel sur l'Asperger's, mais je dois toujours travailler sur les caractéristiques, puis faire un effort, mais c'est sûr qu'on a du travail à faire, même en collectif, là, parce que nous, on est moins d'1%, moi je fais partie de la petite communauté qui est moins de 1%, hein, c'est de la population, mais je fais partie de la moitié de à peu près 50% des Asperger's qui n'ont pas de diagnostic officiel, mais c'est bien des citoyennes qui ont l'expérience avec l'Asperger's, puis qui ont travaillé avec des autistes dans le système de santé, puis ça faisait plus que 9 ans, comme on me l'avait mentionné, que j'ai l'Asperger's, que je suis sur l'aspect de l'autisme, mais j'ai toujours bien sûr voulu, bien sûr, j'ai toujours bien sûr voulu, bien sûr, j'ai pas voulu, bien sûr, accepter, bien sûr. J'ai pas voulu accepter, mais c'est sûr que j'accepte maintenant, parce que ça faisait comme 3 ans et demi, bien sûr, que je l'accepte, mais ça faisait longtemps qu'on me l'avait dit, mais c'est sûr que c'est une difficulté, bien sûr, qui est pas antagoniste. Je ne suis pas antagoniste vis-à-vis vous, les 99% de la population, bien sûr. J'ai pas d'antagonisme, j'ai pas de relation négative. C'est juste que il faut qu'on construise, qu'on bâtit les ponts. Fait que construire ces ponts, bien sûr, on va construire ces ponts, mais c'est sûr que ça prend des fois, bien sûr, des ponts à bâtir, des petits ponts, des moyens ponts, des ponts extra larges ou larges, des 4 catégories que je dis. Bien sûr, c'est fait comme quand vous commandez un café, quand vous prenez des frites, bien sûr, dans le restaurant ou quelque chose que ça soit de cette manière-là que je vais dire, bien sûr, de ces catégories de ponts, la largeur, la catégorie de, bien sûr, la grandeur, des fois c'est petit. C'est moyen, c'est large, c'est extra large. Fait que ça dépend avec les individus aussi, parce qu'on est des individus. Hein. Moi aussi, je suis un individu souverain faisant partie de cette petite communauté de neurodivergents. Puis encore une fois, j'ai pas de sentiments négatifs envers vous. C'est sûr que moi-même, j'ai perdu mes emplois, j'ai perdu mes amis, j'ai tout vécu qu'est-ce que les Aspergers vivent, les gens avec l'autisme vivent en grosse partie, même si on est une petite population. J'ai vécu, j'étais en dépression, j'étais suicidaire. Ben, je célèbre aujourd'hui une célébration, 8 ans. En 2017, j'ai traversé le Canada, fait que ça m'a fait sortir de ma dépression. Hein. En 2017, j'ai traversé le Canada, puis ça m'a fait sortir de ma dépression. Fait que ça, en 2017, j'ai traversé le Canada. Fait que cet événement, bien sûr, ça m'a fait complètement changer. Toute ma vie a changé quand j'ai traversé le Canada. Avant ça, j'étais en dépression puis suicidaire pendant un couple d'années. Fait que j'ai traversé le Canada, bien sûr. Fait que cet événement, ça a fait établir un esprit de corps solide avec le Québec, avec le Canada, avec le collectif de l'Amérique du Nord. Fait que depuis ce temps-là, je m'entraîne. J'ai commencé à m'entraîner, j'ai commencé à sortir de ma dépression. Fait que j'ai perdu entre 80 et 93 livres. Entre 80 et 93 livres. Fait que j'avais perdu un énorme, bien sûr, énorme de poids quand même, entre 80 et 93 livres. Puis c'est un événement, bien sûr, qui m'a solidifié l'esprit de corps avec le Canada et les États-Unis. Vous savez que je suis aussi un mystique. Moi, j'ai crois à la réincarnation. Hein. Des fois, j'étais né homme, femme, homme, femme, femme, homme, femme, homme, homme, femme. Je suis monsieur, madame, androgyne, pansexuel aujourd'hui, le 19 septembre 2025, en vous encourageant à faire l'entraînement physique. Puis je salue les camionneurs, les boulangers, les travailleurs de l'Hydro-Québec. Hein. Les pompiers, tous ceux les travailleurs en construction, bien sûr les chauffeurs d'autobus, tous ceux qui sont sur l'autoroute, bien sûr les camionneurs, puis ceux qui travaillent dans les trains, les chemins de fer, puis bien sûr dans les ports, puis dans le nettoyage, puis tout le travail qui se fait en ce moment, c'est sûr qu'on est intègre à mon travail indépendant que je fais en tant qu'artiste, analyste théoricien en géopolitique. Je dois retourner de la géopolitique, on retourne en arrière en 2019, j'ai prévu qu'est-ce qui se passe maintenant. J'ai la preuve, j'ai la vidéo en ligne. En 2019, j'ai même créé un système d'entraînement physique qui ne requiert aucun équipement, puis que bien sûr n'est pas facile nécessairement à faire, mais de point de vue que ça requiert aucun équipement, c'est sûr que c'est une manière de pas ça requiert pas d'équipement dans ce domaine c'est pas nécessairement que c'est facile, mais moi-même, j'ai complété plus que 372 sessions. Fait que bien sûr, j'ai prévu la situation qui se passe maintenant d'une manière générale en parlant. Là. C'est sûr que pas à chaque détail, mais j'ai prévu qu'il y aura une conflagration internationale vis-à-vis plusieurs points un peu académiques. Mais pour vous faire un résumé, c'est que j'ai prévu qu'à cause qu'il y a des conflits qui n'ont pas eu de résolution finale du 20e siècle, soit de la guerre froide, que ces conflits vont reprendre dans le 21e siècle. Fait que d'une grosse partie, qu'est-ce qui se passe maintenant dans le monde? C'est ces conflits qui ont repris en Ukraine, en Russie. C'est des conflits qui durent de la guerre froide qui a duré à peu près 45 ans entre 1947 et 1991. Fait que si on explore ça aussi, Israël puis Hamas, c'est aussi des conflits du 20e siècle, encore une fois. Hein, Hamas, il a été fondé, créé en 1980, potentiellement c'est l'horizon de la Chine et le Taïwan. Fait que même moi, que je connais ces conflits, je reste quand même un Nord-Américain, un Canadien-Québécois nord-américain, parce que fondamentalement, j'ai l'expérience du Québec, du Canada, en tant que Canadien-Québécois, avec ma condition de neurodivergence et mes propres souffrances, que j'ai vécu la dépression, je l'ai conquis en 2017, puis je me nomme, mon seul stress est financier. financièrement. Je fais appel à tous, amis avec bénéfice. Si vous avez 18 ans et plus, noir et blanc, noir et blanche, homme, femme, ben on fait des amis avec bénéfice, on chante du rock and roll ensemble, puis on se donne des massages, ou sinon, gardez-vous loin à distance, s'il vous plaît, mentionnez pas mon nom, à moins que ça soit pour le bénir, j'espère qu'on a compris. Puis bien sûr, dans ce point de contingence qu'on vit maintenant, c'est l'île de Montréal, bien sûr, c'est que je fais appel à tous de soutenir ma trinité théorie pour la résolution qu'on doit se viser, c'est qu'on règle, qu'on rétablit les relations avec les États-Unis plus fort qu'auparavant, surtout par l'implémentation de ma TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette, pour la création de l'UI, Unité d'échange universelle, pour qu'on rebâtisse tout le collectif de l'Amérique du Nord, un partenariat public-privé, pour qu'on s'intègre de manière de la sécurité nécessaire, vitale, pour la continuité du collectif de la civilisation de l'Américain, qu'on est en train d'avoir un effondrement. Hein?